Chapter 1169. 1169 Forming an alliance with Ciel 1. Bang! 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 Then Ciel 1 kept hitting the fragments of the prison-suppressing Steely. After 36 consecutive slaps, the fragment of the prison-guarding Steely flew back to Lu Ming and hovered above his head. Lu Ming sensed carefully and realized that Ciel 1 had completely broken away from the suppression of the prison-suppressing Steely fragment. He was completely free. Ciel 1 had said before that he could only break free from the prison-suppressing Steely fragment's suppression after recovering to the Emperor realm. Who? Ciel 1 let out a long breath, his eyes shining with excitement. He had been suppressed by the prison-suppressing Steely for 30,000 years and had finally escaped. Lu Ming looked at Ciel 1 and did not say anything. At this moment, Ciel 1 was also looking at Lu Ming. Their eyes met, and each of them had their own thoughts. After a while, Ciel 1 was the first to speak. Lu Ming, how about we form an alliance? Lu Ming was a little stunned. Now that Ciel 1 had completely escaped the influence of the prison-defending monument fragment, Lu Ming had thought of many things that Ciel 1 would say. He had even considered turning hostile and not recognizing him. However, he had never expected that Ciel 1 would actually want to form an alliance with him. Ciel 1 was a man who had dominated the world. His cultivation had already recovered to the Emperor realm, and he had powerful subordinates like Mo Yi. He was extremely powerful. As for Lu Ming, he was only at the 4th level of the spiritual god realm. Why would Ciel 1 need to form an alliance with him? What did an alliance mean? It meant that both sides were equal and on equal footing. Lu Ming could not figure it out. At this moment, countless thoughts ran through Lu Ming's mind. Lu Ming, I know you're very surprised. To be honest, with your current ability, you're not qualified to form an alliance with me. However, your talent is something I've never seen before. In the future, I might need your help. Ciel 1 seemed to have read Lu Ming's mind and explained. What are your specific conditions? Lu Ming said. To be honest, he was also very tempted to form an alliance with Ciel 1. He was still weak. Even if the talisman amulet sect was not trapped, they did not have an emperor to protect them. It would be difficult for them to fight against the overlord forces. He really needed strong help. If he could truly form an alliance with Ciel 1 and stand on equal footing without being restricted by Ciel 1, it would be a good choice. My conditions are very simple. I have my eyes on your future. With your talent, it is 100% certain that you will become an emperor. It might not even be too difficult for you to surpass me in the future. With your talent, the divine wilderness continent is not your end. In the future, you will most likely step out of the divine wilderness continent. My condition is that if you step out of the divine wilderness continent in the future and join a major power in the Yuan continent, you have to think of a way to make me join that major power. Ciel 1 spoke, stating his conditions. Ciel 1's words were very direct, and it was clear that he was interested in his future. This was like an investment. He wanted to invest in Lu Ming. Cultivators should pursue the peak of martial arts and fight against the heavens. The emperor lives for 10,000 years, at most 20,000 years, before he turns into a cup of yellow soil. Only by breaking through to a higher realm can he fight for more longevity. It's said that saints can live for 100,000 years. How carefree is that? Only cultivation is real, everything else is just an empty title. It's a pity that I've been suppressed for 30,000 years. I've long passed the age of my peak. It's impossible for me to join a major power like the Yuan continent. Ciel 1 sighed, his eyes filled with yearning. The peak of martial arts and a longer lifespan were the lifelong goals of every cultivator. Lu Ming could hear the helplessness in Ciel 1's words. Originally, with Ciel 1's talent, if he hadn't been suppressed for 30,000 years, he could have joined a major power in the Yuan continent. But now, it was impossible. He needed help. Therefore, he proposed such a condition to Lu Ming. Lu Ming's talent was higher than his in the past. Lu Ming, this is my condition. If you agree to it, we'll form an alliance and be on equal footing. My force is yours. I can help you deal with strong enemies. I'm sure you've offended many strong enemies along the way. Ciel 1 stared at Lu Ming. All right, I promise you. Lu Ming pondered for a moment and nodded. Xiao Wan had made it very clear. In fact, this was an exchange of interests. Sometimes, Lu Ming was more willing to believe in an exchange of interests. This was more real. Lu Ming did not believe that Xie Lai had agreed to form an alliance with him to thank him for saving his life. All right. Xiao Wan was overjoyed. He waved his hand in the air, and a complex blood-colored inscription pattern appeared. I'll make a blood oath now to form an alliance with you, Lu Ming. Xiao Wan was very decisive. He immediately took a blood oath to form an alliance with Lu Ming. After that, Lu Ming also discovered the blood oath. Haha, all of you, come over. Xiao Wan turned to Mo Yi and the others. Mo Yi and the rest flew over. As you can see, Lu Ming and I have formed an alliance and are on equal footing. I declare that from now on, Lu Ming and I will be the supreme commander. He will have the same authority as me. In the future, when you see him, it will be the same as seeing me. Do you understand? Xiao Wan ordered. Your subordinate understands. Although Mo Yi and the rest had 1,000 questions in their hearts, they could only nod. Was this young man's talent really higher than the fiend ancestors? Mo Yi and the rest found it hard to believe. Mo Yi, during this period of time, you've sent people to gather information about the outside world. How's the situation in the central continent now? Xiao Wan asked. It's chaotic. The outside world is in chaos. Immediately, Mo Yi began to introduce the information he had gathered during this period of time. Ever since Xiao Wan had taken out the Heavenly King token in the sacred city, a battle between the emperors had begun. The death of Wu Ju and Wu Huang shocked the world. After that, the emperors of the central continent's various overlord forces all moved out and gathered in the sacred city, wanting to fight for the Heavenly King token. In the end, the royal family was pressured to hand over the Heavenly King token. This resulted in an earth-shattering war between the emperors. That battle could be said to be the most intense and brutal battle since Xiao Wan's rebellion 30,000 years ago. There were more than 20 sovereigns in the battle, and it was a terrifying battle. Many emperors were injured in that battle, and 2 of them even died on the spot. In the end, the Heavenly King's token fell into the hands of the heaven-suppressing divine army. After this battle, Central Continent was in complete chaos. First, the royal family, the Xie family, gathered their allies and sent out a great army to attack the heaven-suppressing divine army. Not to be outdone, the heaven-suppressing divine army also united with its allies and mobilized the army to fight against the royal family. The other overlord forces that did not participate in the fight between the 2 forces also began to attack each other. In the past, although there was constant friction between the major forces, it was still controlled on a small scale and a delicate balance was maintained. However, the battle for the Heavenly King token had completely broken the balance. The royal family and the Xie family were fighting against each other, and the remaining overlord forces also took the opportunity to expand their strength. Almost all the forces in the central continent were involved. Chapter 1170. 1170 Lu Ming is in command, the army is out. The Ji family and the Sky Eagle Castle suffered the most. This was because in the battle for the Heavenly King's token, the 2 emperors who had fallen were the emperors of the Ji family and the Sky Eagle Castle. These 2 forces only had 1 emperor each. Now that their emperors had fallen, they naturally became popular in the eyes of the other forces. By now, these 2 overlord forces had already been destroyed. Out of the 18 overlord forces of the central continent, only 16 remained. How cruel was it for an overlord force to be destroyed just like that? How are the forces around the chaotic realm? Lu Ming asked. Mo Yi answered honestly, Cold Blood Hall and the Floating Mountain sect are the closest to the chaotic realm. After the death of the Eagle King, Cold Blood Hall was the first to react. They immediately sent an army to attack the Sky Eagle Castle and divided most of the territory. Some of the experts in the Sky Eagle Castle also surrendered to Cold Blood Hall, which greatly improved their strength. Now, Cold Blood Hall is fighting with the Floating Mountain sect. It seems that Cold Blood Hall has even attacked the headquarters of the Floating Mountain sect. Cold Blood Hall. Lu Ming's eyes flashed coldly. Cold-Blood Hall had always held a grudge against him. How are the other territories? Did they fight? Ciel asked. Northern Plains has gone to battle. When the various emperors were fighting for the Heavenly King token, Northern Plains emperors participated, but now, Northern Plains seems to be in an internal war. The various forces in Northern Plains are fighting each other. They did not interfere in Central Continent's matter. However, the Western Desert, the Southern Underworld, and the Eastern Barren Territory have not participated in the battle, and no emperor has tried to snatch the Heavenly King token. Mo Yi replied. Neither the Southern Nether nor the Eastern Barren Territory have participated in the battle. Lu Ming and Ciel were a little surprised. It was still acceptable that Western Desert did not fight. Because Western Desert's history was very long, there were rumors that Western Desert had a huge background and seemed to be related to the ocean. However, it was strange that neither the Southern Nether nor the Eastern Barren Territory had sent out any emperors. This was especially true for the emperors of the underworld of the Southern Underworld. They were all extremely powerful, sinister, bloodthirsty, and greedy. In the face of the Heavenly King's token, he was actually indifferent. The emperor of the East Continent didn't participate. This was very abnormal. Senior, what should we do now? After pondering for a moment, Lu Ming asked Ciel. To Northern Plains, haha, I might as well tell you, I have a backup plan in Northern Plains. The Overlord force of Northern Plains, Demon God Valley, is one of them. We will first go to Northern Plains and unify all the forces there, then we will sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. We will make plans after seeing the situation in Central Continent. Ciel laughed. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. The other party was indeed the Chaotic Heavens Divine Warrior. He caused the ancient sacred dynasty, which was at its peak, to fall apart. He was truly unfathomable. Even if he was suppressed, he had left behind a series of backup plans. But to go to Northern Plains, we need to use the Overlord Force's inter-territory teleportation formation. Now that there is a war, who would want to use our inter-territory teleportation formation? We have to destroy one of the Overlord Forces to use their inter-territory teleportation formation. Lu Ming spoke. He could tell what the problem was. Haha, that's right. So, we have to destroy one of the two forces, Cold-Blood Hall and the Floating Mountain. Lu Ming, which one do you think we should destroy? Ciel said. Let's destroy Cold-Blood Hall. I have a history with the Floating Mountain sect. Maybe we can form an alliance. Lu Ming said. Alright, let's destroy Cold-Blood Hall. Mo Yi, assemble the army and set off immediately, Ciel ordered. Mo Yi and the rest went to gather the army while Lu Ming strolled in the air and arrived in front of a tall, ancient hall. This ancient palace was the demonic palace, where Xian Yanqing was in seclusion. Not long after Lu Ming's arrival, Xian Yanqing appeared at the entrance of the ancient hall. Xiaoqing, let's go. I'll take you back to the East Continent, he said. Lu Ming pulled Xian Yanqing's hand. Lu Ming had another purpose for this battle. If Cold-Blood Hall was destroyed, Lu Ming could use the cross-territory teleportation formation to connect with the Talisman Amulet sect. In that case, the Talisman Amulet sect could use the cross-territory teleportation formation to teleport people directly to Cold-Blood Hall. In that case, the Talisman Amulet sect would be able to solve their problems. Even if Yi broke through the yin and yang formation, he would not be afraid. In addition, Lu Ming also wanted to see if he could use the power of Cielun and Mo Yi, the two demon emperors, to get rid of Yi. If he could get rid of Yi, he would be able to get rid of all future troubles. Lu Ming, has Ciel recovered? Xian Yanqing asked, his eyes filled with worry. Obviously, Xian Yanqing didn't trust Ciel either. Ciel was a demon emperor who had caused chaos in the world. If he fully recovered and got rid of the shackles of the prison-suppressing Steely, who knew what he would do? Xian Yanqing was also a little worried. Don't worry, Ciel and I have already formed an alliance. Lu Ming then told him about the alliance between Ciel and him. After hearing this, Xian Yanqing was relieved. Boom, boom, boom. The iron hooves stomped in the air. The void in the Myriad demon's abyss trembled, and demonic chi soared into the sky. An army of over 100,000 soldiers, clad in battle armor and riding on powerful magical beasts, leaped in the sky, causing the air to tremble. The army of 100000 was made up of elites above the spiritual ocean tier. This was already equivalent to the army of an overlord force. The army of the overlord forces had the spirit ocean as the soldier, the spirit embryo as the stem, and the spirit god as the general. They could destroy the heavens and earth. 100,000 people, riding on magical beasts, gathered in the sky above the city. At the forefront, Lu Ming and Xiel Wan stood side by side. A little behind them were Xian Yanqing, Mo Yi, and a dozen other supreme martial artists. This battle is our first battle. After this battle, we will walk out of the Myriad demon's abyss and make a name for our sleevers in the vast divine wilderness mainland. Do you have the confidence? Xiel Wan's voice came from the distance. There are. The army of 100,000 roared, their momentum shaking the heavens. All right, our target is the Overlord Force, Coldblood Hall. We've received news that the main force of Coldblood Hall is currently besieging the floating mountain and fighting there. We'll split into two groups. One group will be led by Lu Ming to besiege and kill the Coldblood Hall army that is attacking the floating mountain with Mo Yi as support. The other group will follow me to attack the headquarters of Coldblood Hall. Let's go. After Xiel Wan's announcement, the army set out. Let's go. Lu Ming led the main military force and set off first, heading straight for the floating mountain. Boom, boom, boom. A total of 80,000 soldiers rode demonic beasts and followed Lu Ming out of the Myriad demon's abyss, flying toward the floating mountain. Lu Ming was riding on a perfected spiritual god demonic beast and flying at the front. As he looked at the army behind him, his eyes were filled with anticipation. Lu Ming understood that this army did not belong to him. It belonged to Xiel Wan. He was still weak now, but Lu Ming was confident that he would be able to dominate the divine wilderness continent soon. He would have his own invincible army and conquer the world. This day won't be too long. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with confidence. Once they were out of the chaotic domain, Mo Yi took out a huge warship. The 80,000 soldiers boarded the warship. Mo Yi controlled the warship and flew towards the floating mountain. Of course, they couldn't fly to the floating mountain, as it was too far. Many Sea of Soul Realm warriors would need to fly for a long time, but with Mo Yi's warship, it would be many times faster. This kind of warship was originally refined to be used in a great battle. Sometimes, when the teleportation formation could not operate, the warship was used to transport troops. Chapter 1171. 1171 Idiot. The floating mountain, this beautiful sacred mountain, was now engulfed in the flames of war. Coldblood Hall had almost turned out in full strength to attack the floating mountain. The floating mountain sect had activated its defensive formation, but after many days of attacks from Coldblood Hall, the formation had already collapsed. A fierce battle was still going on. Blood stained the entire divine mountain. Coldblood Hall was already stronger than the floating mountain sect. Plus, they had taken action quickly and occupied a large amount of Sky Eagle Castle territory. Many powerful existences in Sky Eagle Castle had surrendered to Coldblood Hall, so Coldblood Hall had completely suppressed the floating mountain sect. Boom, boom, boom. A terrible roar came from the high sky. It was the battle between the two emperors of Coldblood Hall and the floating mountain. It was so intense that it was difficult to determine the winner. The battle was even more intense in various parts of the floating mountain. The Coldblood Hall and some experts from the Sky Eagle Castle had more supreme beings than the floating mountain. In terms of the number of sovereigns and advanced stage spiritual gods, Coldblood Hall was superior to the floating mountain. Gah! Gah! In some parts of the floating mountain, the great formation had collapsed. Giant eagles were circling around and launching terrifying attacks. They were all experts from the Sky Eagle Castle. The Sky Eagle Castle experts had just surrendered, so they were naturally eager to be put in an important position in Coldblood Hall. Ha ha! Floating Mountain Martial School, let's see how long you can last. Pure spatial spirit, after we break the Floating Mountain Martial School, I will make you beg for mercy under my crotch. Shui Luozi stood in the air, looking at the floating mountain and sneering. Beside him, there were many experts. This time, the Blood Emperor of Coldblood Hall had given him a lot of power and a powerful army to command. It was obvious that he wanted to train him as his successor. The blood-covered disciple was the future hope of the Coldblood Hall. Give me more strength and break the floating mountain. At that time, I will reward you according to your merit. Coldblood Hall's voice came from afar. His face was like a spring breeze, high-spirited, and full of pride. The Sky Eagle Castle, the overlord force that had been fighting with Coldblood Hall, had still been destroyed by Coldblood Hall. Yin Bupo, a powerful second-grade Heaven's favorite, was killed by Master Xue Luo in the end. Coldblood Hall's strength had skyrocketed. Now, the floating mountain sect was about to be taken down. Blood Luo Zi could already see the scene of him becoming the emperor and leading the experts of Coldblood Hall to conquer the central continent. Jing Kongling, Tan Xiong, Liu Yuxin, Xianyan Juan, you are all mine. Sooner or later, I will take you all. Xue Luo Zi continued to dream and imagine. Boom, boom, boom. Deafening rumbles suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. It was as if thousands of savage beasts were stepping on the void. The loud explosion interrupted Xue Luo Zi's beautiful dream. His eyes turned gloomy and he shouted coldly, "What's going on? Young Master Xue, there seems to be a large army coming this way." An old man in a blood-red robe looked behind him with a serious expression. An army? Which army is it? Coldblood Hall's heart sank as they asked. Demonic chi soaring up to the sky, could it be the army of the Devil Mountain? That shouldn't be the case. The Devil Mountain can't even take care of Themslevers right now. How would they have the strength to come here? The blood-robed elder frowned. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky, the shaking sound became more and more intense, and the entire sky was shaking slightly. The Coldblood Hall experts gathered a portion of their experts and set up a defense, watching from afar. Gradually, demonic chi filled the sky. In the endless demonic chi, countless experts in black iron armor rode demonic beasts and rushed over. Finally, they stopped 1,000 miles away from Coldblood Hall. Which force are you from? We're from Coldblood Hall. Why have you come here? Coldblood Hall stepped out of the crowd and spoke first. I'm here to destroy your Coldblood Hall. Let's go. A voice said. Two figures stepped out and appeared in front of them. It's you, Lu Shaoqing. No, Lu Ming. Xue Luo Zi's pupils contracted as he exclaimed in disbelief. It was Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing who had stepped into the air. The other Coldblood Hall experts also widened their eyes in shock. A few months ago, in order to capture Lu Ming, the Xie family of the royal family activated the Heaven's Secrets instrument, which shocked the entire central continent. However, in the end, not only did they fail to capture Lu Ming, but a series of major events also happened. It could be said that everything had started because of Lu Ming. Ever since Lu Ming had appeared in the Holy City, he had disappeared along with Xiel Wan. He did not expect that he would appear again. Lu Ming had appeared. Then, what about Xiel Wan? The Coldblood Hall members' eyes flickered with fear as they looked at Lu Ming's group with a serious expression. Xiel Wan's name was too great, and it frightened them. There's no need to look, the chaotic heaven's divine warrior isn't here, Lu Ming said calmly. Lu Ming, what do you mean by that? Blood Luo Zi asked. Didn't I just tell you? I'm going to destroy your Coldblood Hall. It seems that your ears are not good. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Destroy Coldblood Hall? Even if Xiel Wan came here personally, he wouldn't dare to say such a thing. The imperial family has long since spread the news that Xiel Wan has been suppressed for 30,000 years and has been injured to the point where he no longer has the might of an emperor. Don't think that we're afraid of him, and besides, he hasn't come yet. Elder Yuan, go and cripple Lu Ming. Xue Luo Zi gritted his teeth and said, Kill. A blood-robed elder released a terrifying aura and charged towards Lu Ming. A paragon. This was a paragon. You're looking for death. Behind Lu Ming, a burly man with a giant axe in his hand stepped forward and slashed at the blood-robed elder. Boom. The two of them exchanged a blow, and their bodies trembled as they retreated. Paragon. Xue Luo Zi's face darkened. Senior, I don't know why you've been bewitched by Lu Ming, but it's not good for anyone to go against Coldblood Hall because of this kid. Can you give Coldblood Hall some face and hand over Lu Ming? Then, leave, and Coldblood Hall will reward you handsomely. Xue Luozi cupped his fists at the burly man and said. In his heart, he could negotiate terms for anything. He speculated that these experts might be Xielwan's subordinates, but even if Xielwan came personally, he could still negotiate the conditions. He speculated that the reason why these demonic experts came with Lu Ming to attack Coldblood Hall was because Lu Ming had promised them something. But could Lu Ming's offer be compared to Coldblood Hall's? Could Lu Ming's value be compared to Coldblood Hall? As long as he persuaded these demonic experts, it would be a matter of minutes for them to take down Lu Ming. What an idiot. Young Master Lu Ming is the supreme commander of our army. He's on the same level as the chaotic heaven's demonic ancestor, and you're asking us to hand him over? The burly man waved the battle-axe in his hand and revealed a mocking smile. What? What? Supreme Commander? On an equal footing with the chaotic heaven's divine emperor? Blood Luozi and the others from Coldblood Hall were dumbfounded. Lu Ming was the highest-ranking commander of these people and he was on the same level as Xielwan. How was this possible? Lu Ming, what right did he have? Kill. Wipe out Coldblood Hall. At that moment, Lu Ming waved his hand and gave the order. Chapter 1172. 1172 Killing Blood Luozi. The demonic chi surged like a thunderbolt. At Lu Ming's command, terrifying existences stepped out from behind him and charged at the Coldblood Hall people. The experts of Coldblood Hall, including Blood Luozi, were shocked because the experts coming at them were too powerful. There were no less than 6 or 7 sovereigns and many advanced spiritual gods. Kill, kill, kill them, Xue Luozi shrieked, but he retreated. Kill. The experts from both sides collided, creating a shocking shockwave. Black demonic chi and blood-red demonic chi soared into the sky and filled the entire region. Bang! Lu Ming stepped forward and walked toward Blood Luozi. Xue Luozi, you escaped with your life talisman in the secret realm of the Saint Mansion. Today, I'll take your life. Lu Ming stared at Blood Luozi and walked toward him step by step. Xue Luozi's face turned ugly. He retreated quickly and roared, "Kill him, Lu Ming, die." Beside Xue Luozi, a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe charged at Lu Ming. He was a perfected spiritual god. However, as soon as he appeared, another expert rushed out from behind Lu Ming and blocked him. "Now, let's see who can save you," said Lu Ming. That perfected spiritual god was the last powerful person around Blood Luozi. The rest were not worth mentioning. Kill him. Blood Luozi continued to shout. The 2 7th-level spiritual god realm experts charged towards Lu Ming. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming struck out with his palms, and the 2 7th-level spiritual god realm experts were torn to pieces. Why would I? Xue Luozi's face turned pale with fear. An expert at the 7th level of the spiritual god realm was killed by Lu Ming with one palm. How could he be so powerful? No one can save you today. Lu Ming took a few steps forward and approached Blood Luozi rapidly. "Save me, forefather, save me." Xue Luozi screamed in fear. Lu Ming could even kill a 7th-level spiritual god realm expert with a flip of his hand, let alone him. He was really afraid. The other Coldblood Hall experts wanted to help, but they were all entangled by their opponents and could not get away. Some experts were further away and could not make it in time. "Evil creature, you're looking for death." At this moment, an earth-shattering roar came from the sky. Then, a ray of blood-red light broke through the sky and slashed toward Lu Ming with an aura that could destroy everything. "Patriarch, haha, Lu Ming, die." Xue Luozi was overjoyed and revealed a ferocious expression. The attack was filled with the pressure of an emperor. It was the emperor of Coldblood Hall who wanted to kill Lu Ming in one blow. However, at this moment, behind Lu Ming, a burly man in iron armor burst out with an earth-shattering aura. His demonic might was unparalleled. With a flash of demonic light, he destroyed the bloodlight. "I didn't want to gang up on you, but since you're looking for death, I'll fulfill your wish." Mo Yi looked at the sky with a cold look. The next moment, he turned into a beam of demonic light and rushed into the sky, attacking the Cold Blood Hall Emperor together with the Suspended Mountains Emperor. The Emperor, it's the Emperor. Everyone else was dumbfounded. Ciel Wan did not come, but apart from him, there was actually an emperor behind Lu Ming. This was too shocking. Many people from Cold Blood Hall were in despair. The consequences would be severe if two emperors attacked the emperor of Cold Blood Hall. Demon Emperor! Xue Luozi screamed in fear, his eyes filled with despair. Kill! Lu Ming took another step forward and appeared in front of Xue Luozi. He struck his palm down. No! Xue Luozi roared and used the bloodline fusion to transform into a blood-winged bat to resist. However, Lu Ming's palm struck down and the blood-winged bat was crushed by the terrifying force. Not only the blood-winged bat, but Xue Luozi's body was also shattered. Xue Luozi was dead. The people of Cold Blood Hall were shocked. Master Xue Luo, a genius who had the potential to become an emperor, was dead. It was a great loss for Cold Blood Hall. An angry roar came from the sky. What are you shouting for? You can't even protect yourself today. Mo Yi's voice rang out from the sky. Roar. Lu Ming controlled the bloodline of the 9 dragons to devour the blood essence and energy of the blood Luozi. However, Lu Ming frowned immediately. This was because the blood Luozi cultivated the mentality of blood, which was not of much use to Lu Ming. Only the blood essence had some use. At this moment, on the floating mountain, an extremely beautiful woman was looking at the battlefield outside. This woman was Jing Kongling. Beside her stood a few experts from the floating mountain sect. Open the formation and fight our way out. Work with Lu Ming and attack Cold Blood Hall from both sides. At this moment, Jing Kongling opened his mouth and gave an order. Now, the second-class geniuses had grown up and entered the spiritual god realm one after another. As these second-class geniuses entered the spiritual god realm, their status in their respective sects and forces also rose. They were comparable to some supremes, or even higher, and they had an important right to speak. This was because second-grade geniuses were bound to become supreme beings in the future. They even had a high chance of becoming emperors, and their potential was limitless. The various major factions had already begun to slowly transfer some power to them as a way to hone them's levers. Just like Xue Luozi, in the floating mountain, the pure void spirit also had an important right to speak. Kongling, it's too dangerous. Who knows if Lu Ming will turn around and target us, the floating mountain sec. An elder beside the pristine void spirit asked with a slightly changed expression. That's right. In these troubled times, Lu Ming and Ciel Wan are walking together, and there's actually an emperor following them. We have to be on guard, the other person said. Don't worry. Lu Ming and I are old friends. I trust him. Open the formation and work with Lu Ming. We must completely destroy Cold Blood Hall in today's battle. Otherwise, we won't have such a good opportunity if we miss it, Jing Kongling said with a firm tone. All right, I'll listen to you, an old man said. Then, his voice spread throughout the floating mountain. Open the formation and kill our way out. Kill. Kill. The formation was activated, and the floating mountain gathered its power and charged toward Cold Blood Hall. They and Lu Ming's men attacked Cold Blood Hall from both sides. Cold Blood Hall was in chaos and at a disadvantage. One by one, the experts were killed. Boom. 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 In the sky, the battle was the most intense, and the sky kept shaking. All of a sudden, a blood-red light appeared. An arm fell from the sky with a soaring blood chi, emitting a strong emperor's pressure. It's the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor is injured. Someone exclaimed. The Cold Blood Hall people were especially pale. The Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall is about to be defeated. Kill him. Lu Ming's men and those from the Floating Mountain sect took the opportunity to shout. Their morale was greatly boosted, and they completely suppressed Cold Blood Hall. Cold Blood Hall experts were killed one after another, and their bodies fell to the ground like rain. Lu Ming controlled the 9 dragons' bloodline and walked on the battlefield, devouring energy and blood essence. Chapter 1173. 1173 Blood Emperor retreats in defeat. Unfortunately, most of the people in Cold Blood Hall cultivated the mentality of blood. A few of them cultivated the mentality of tools, which was not of much use to Lu Ming. It did not improve his mentality at all. After devouring a huge amount of energy, Lu Ming's cultivation level was rapidly increasing. However, when he reached the peak of the 4th level of the spiritual god realm, his cultivation level stopped. No matter how much energy he refined, he could not absorb it. It could only dissipate and be wasted. Because the essence realm of heaven and earth did not improve, his cultivation was stuck. In the end, Lu Ming decided not to devour the vital essence and energy. He only devoured the blood essence to improve his blood meridian. However, Lu Ming had continuously devoured the blood essence of more than a dozen 8th and 9th level spiritual god realm experts, and even perfected spiritual god realm experts. His bloodline did not improve at all. The bloodlines of the 9 dragons and the prison-suppressing stele were both at the 8th level of the divine level. Advancing from level 8 to level 9 of the divine level was truly too difficult. Lu Ming shook his head and smiled bitterly. Could it be that he had to devour the blood essence of a supreme being in order to improve? Lu Ming started to look around to see if any supreme being had been killed. Ah! A shrill cry was heard as a Cold Blood Hall supreme was killed. Blood splattered everywhere and fell to the ground. The blood contained a terrifying power. Some of the spirit embryo realm experts were splashed by the blood, and their bodies were immediately riddled with holes. Quickly retreat. Below, the troops from the Myriad Demons Abyss and Cold Blood Hall retreated in fear of being splashed by the blood. Blood essence of a supreme being. Lu Ming's eyes were burning with passion. Little Qing, wait for me here, Lu Ming said to Xian Yanqing. Be careful, Xian Yanqing warned. Don't worry. Lu Ming smiled and used his movement technique to rush toward the supreme being's corpse. Whoosh! A drop of supreme being blood shot toward Lu Ming like a blood-red shooting star, carrying a terrifying aura. Bang! Lu Ming struck out with his palm, striking the drop of blood and dispersing it. However, Lu Ming also felt a tingling sensation in his palm, and a dull pain. A supreme martial artist is really powerful. This is just a drop of blood that flew around after his death, but it already has such a terrifying power and contains such a powerful energy. It's a pity that my current heaven and earth will realm is not enough. Otherwise, I could refine this drop of blood and quickly improve my cultivation, Lu Ming pondered to himself. Then, he ignored the blood and dashed towards the supreme being's corpse in a flash. The 9-dragon bloodline opened its mouth and let out a long roar. The devouring power burst out, and 9 drops of crystal-clear blood essence flew out from the supreme being's corpse and were swallowed by the 9 dragons. Boom! After the 9 drops of blood were swallowed by the 9 dragons, they exploded. Endless energy kicked around in the bodies of the 9 dragons. The bodies of the 9 dragons swelled up rapidly, like leather balls, and their volume expanded several times. The energy within the blood essence of a supreme martial artist was too powerful. Refine, refine. Lu Ming roared and frantically controlled the 9-dragon bloodline to refine it. He knew that he had been too impulsive. The power of the supreme being's blood essence was simply too astonishing. Even with his current cultivation base, he had to refine it drop by drop. The most stable way was to devour all 9 drops at once. The power of that kind of energy was simply too astonishing. Boom, boom, boom. The bloodline of the 9 dragons circulated the power of refinement and began to refine the blood essence in his body. Fortunately, he managed to withstand it and didn't explode. Slowly, the blood essence of the supreme martial artist was refined and used to improve the bloodline of the 9 dragons. Die. At this moment, a blood-red light flashed and charged toward Lu Ming. A white-haired elder from Cold Blood Hall with the cultivation of the 8th level of the spiritual god realm was Xue Luozi's guardian. He had his eyes on Lu Ming ever since Xue Luozi was killed. He took the opportunity to attack Lu Ming. You're looking for death. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. His 3rd bloodline emerged, and killing intent gushed out like a tide. Bang! Lu Ming's palm shattered his opponent's blood-red light. The force of his palm was like a storm, surging towards his opponent. Back then, outside the holy city, Lu Ming had the ability to kill an expert at the peak of the 8th level of the spiritual god realm. Now that a few months had passed, Lu Ming's cultivation had increased to the peak of the 4th level of the spiritual god realm. His combat strength was stronger than a few months ago, and it was much easier to deal with an expert at the peak of the 8th level of the spiritual god realm. The other party was shocked. He did not expect that his surprise attack would be easily defeated by Lu Ming. At this moment, he exploded his essential core and threw a punch. Bang! Lu Ming's palm landed on his fist, causing him to tremble and retreat rapidly. Kill, kill. Lu Ming's eyes turned blood red and an endless killing intent enveloped the other party, causing him to shiver and his combat strength to weaken. Boom! Activating the prison-suppressing heavenly art, he struck out 2 palm strikes in succession. The white-haired old man tried his best to catch the 2 palms, but his arm exploded, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Whoosh! The third bloodline turned into a blood-red sword. Under Lu Ming's control, it turned into a blood-red light and pierced through the space between the eyebrows of the white-haired elder, killing him. Hoo hoo hoo! Lu Ming's figure flashed and he returned to Xian Yanqing's side. There was a supreme being by Xian Yanqing's side, which was enough to ensure their safety. After that, Lu Ming sat cross-legged and focused on refining the blood essence. The refining process took more than 10 minutes before the blood essence energy in the 9 dragons' bodies finally calmed down. Under Lu Ming's control, he opened his eyes and stood up. The sovereign's blood essence was still not completely refined, but there was no need to worry. He could slowly refine it. At this moment, the situation on the battlefield was clear. Countless Cold Blood Hall experts had been killed, and even a few supreme martial artists had fallen. They were completely at a disadvantage. It was only a matter of time before they were defeated. Sila. At this moment, the space in the sky was constantly cracking. Lu Ming looked up and could barely see 3 figures fighting. One of the figures exuded a demonic aura that soared into the sky. It was Mo Yi. The other person was a woman with a graceful figure. She was shrouded by a halo and her appearance couldn't be seen clearly. She must be the sovereign of the floating mountain sect, Martial Emperor Yushin. The last person was covered in a bloody light. He was the Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall. However, at this moment, the Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall was in a sorry state. His aura was weak, and one of his arms was missing. He had been severely injured by Martial Emperors Yi and Yushin. Blood Emperor, you shall stay here today. A cold voice filled with killing intent was heard. It was Martial Emperor Yushin. You want to kill me? In your dreams. The Blood Emperor's cold voice rang out. A crimson light suddenly flashed, forcing the Moon Heart Martial Emperor and Mo Yi to retreat. He then turned into a streak of crimson light and fled into the distance. The Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall had escaped. You want to escape? Dream on. Mo Yi shouted coldly and chased after them with Martial Emperor Yushin, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Seeing the Blood Emperor flee in defeat, the morale of the Cold Blood Hall members plummeted. I surrender, I surrender, I also surrender. The giant eagles from Sky Eagle Castle were the first to surrender. They had no sense of belonging to Cold Blood Hall, so they naturally surrendered one by one when they saw the situation turn for the worse. With the surrender of the giant eagle, Cold Blood Hall was at a disadvantage. Those who surrender and are willing to inscribe a formation in their sea of consciousness can be spared. Otherwise, they will be killed without mercy. Lu Ming's voice could be heard from afar. Chapter 1174. 1174 Forming an alliance with the Floating Mountain Sect. I'm also willing to surrender. I also surrender. In the end, even the disciples and experts of Cold Blood Hall began to surrender. Those who refused to surrender were directly killed. Soon, the battle stopped. Almost all the experts from Cold Blood Hall had surrendered. A few supreme beings had escaped, while the rest had surrendered. Even the Emperor had fled in defeat. If they put up a last-ditch resistance, they would still be courting death. The great battle ended just like that. After that, Lu Ming instructed the powerhouses to work with the floating mountain to inscribe an array in the consciousness of the people who surrendered. Brother Lu, we meet again. The pure and ethereal spirit came over gracefully, her grace peerless. Her entire body was covered in mist, ethereal like an immortal. Miss Kong Ling. Lu Ming cupped his fists. Jing Kongling's eyes fell on Xian Yanqing and he said, "This must be Miss Xian Yanqing. She's so beautiful that Brother Lu is willing to go to the demon realm in person." Xian Yanqing's eyes darted around as he held onto Lu Ming's arm. "Miss is too polite." Then, a voice was transmitted into Lu Ming's ears. "While I'm not here, you know quite a lot of beautiful women, huh? I was wondering why you attacked Coldblood Hall instead of the floating mountain. There's a beauty here waiting for you to save her." Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Could this girl be jealous? Lu Ming's mind was spinning rapidly. He was trying to find a reason to explain. Sila. At this moment, the space cracked open, and Mo Yi and the Moon Heart Martial Emperor walked out of it. "Mo Yi, how's the Blood Emperor of Coldblood Hall?" Lu Ming asked hurriedly. That fellow's body was shattered, and his spiritual god was also severely injured by us. Unfortunately, he still managed to escape with his heavily injured spiritual god. Mo Yi explained with some pity. Lu Ming sighed to himself. The Blood Emperor was indeed powerful and difficult to kill. He managed to escape despite the combined attacks of two martial emperors of the same level. However, although he has escaped, he won't be able to cause any trouble in a short period of time. His spiritual god is heavily injured and he has escaped with all his might. He doesn't have much strength left. Mo Yi explained. This time, many thanks for Brother Mo Yi's help. At this moment, Martial Emperor Yushin spoke and cupped her hands towards Mo Yi. Martial Emperor Yushin was very beautiful. She looked to be in her 30s and didn't look like an emperor path expert who had been famous in the central continent for nearly 10,000 years. "Haha, there's no need to thank me. I'm only following orders. If you want to thank someone, you should thank Commander Lu Ming." Mo Yi smiled and looked at Lu Ming. Martial Emperor Yushin looked at Lu Ming in surprise. Mo Yi actually listened to Lu Ming's orders. An emperor actually took orders from a young junior. This was truly rare in the world. "Greetings, Senior Yushin." Lu Ming cupped his fists at Martial Emperor Yushin. "You're too kind, Commander-in-Chief Lu. Shall we go into the mountains for a chat?" Martial Emperor Yushin said. Lu Ming and the others nodded and followed Martial Emperor Yushin, Jing Kongling, and the others into the floating mountain. They sat down in a hall. "This time, thank you, Commander Lu, for leading the army to help us. Otherwise, the floating mountain would have been in danger." Martial Emperor Yushin thanked Lu Ming again. "Martial Emperor is too polite. I am old friends with Miss Kong Ling of the Floating Mountain Martial School and Brother Chu Kwong. It is only right for me to lend a hand." Lu Ming pondered for a moment and said, "The central continent is in chaos now. All the major forces are fighting each other. If we are separated, we will be weak. If we join forces, we will be strong. Lu Ming wants to form an alliance with the Floating Mountain sect. What do you think, Martial Emperor?" "Alliance?" Martial Emperor Yushin, Jing Kongling, and the other supreme figures of the Floating Mountain sect were all stunned and fell into deep thought. Martial Emperor Yushin pondered for a moment and said, "I wonder if Senior Xielwan is here?" "Senior Xie is at the headquarters of Coldblood Hall." "I'm afraid the hall has already fallen into your hands," Lu Ming said. "The two sides have formed an alliance. Commander Lu, can you represent Senior Xie?" Martial Emperor Yushin said. Obviously, Lu Ming was not important enough in Martial Emperor Yuexin's eyes. "Don't worry, Commander Lu can make the decision on behalf of the Ancestor Devil." From the side, Mo Yi spoke. This shocked Martial Emperor Yushin, Jing Kongling, and the others. He did not expect Lu Ming to have such great power in Xielwan's faction. Yuexin's eyes flickered slightly. All the rumors about Lu Ming that she had heard kept flashing through her mind. This kid has a bright future. In the end, Yuexin's eyes lit up, and she said, "Good, since that's the case, the Floating Mountain Martial School will form an alliance with Commander Lu." She was talking about Commander Lu, not the Emperor of Chaos. "All right. Lu Ming, thank you, Senior Yu." Lu Ming was overjoyed. To Lu Ming, it was greatly beneficial to have another ally. At that moment, the two sides carried out a simple ceremony and officially formed an alliance. After the alliance, Lu Ming bade farewell to Yushin and the others because Ciel Wan had sent news that the Cold Blood Hall's base was completely under control. Lu Ming led the army and headed straight for Cold Blood Hall. Cold Blood Hall had been completely occupied. Those who had stayed behind had either surrendered or been killed. There were experts from the Myriad demons abyss everywhere in the Cold Blood Hall. Many of them were inscribing formations or repairing them. It did not take long for Lu Ming and the rest to arrive at Cold Blood Hall. At the cross-territory teleportation formation in Cold Blood Hall, more than a dozen experts gathered. Ciel Wan, Lu Ming, Mo Yi, and the others were among them. Lu Ming, I didn't expect you to be the Zongzi of the Talisman Amulet sect in the Eastern Wilderness. It's strange that you don't have any mental energy fire at all. Ciel Wan laughed. Lu Ming smiled and did not explain further. Seniors, please help me adjust the coordinates of the Talisman Amulet sect. Lu Ming said. A few supreme martial artists who were more skilled in the Tao of Inscription stepped forward and adjusted the coordinates of the Talisman Amulet sect on the huge interterritory teleportation altar. Lu Ming closed his eyes. At that moment, in the Talisman Amulet sect, a cave abode that had been closed for a long time suddenly opened. Lu Ming's Ming Lian clone stepped out. Lu Ming's body moved and he headed toward Bai Shijin's mansion. Not long after, Lu Ming, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and two other supreme elders appeared at the cross-territory teleportation formation of the Talisman Amulet sect. The chaotic heavens divine warrior, Ciel Wan, has actually reappeared. You even formed an alliance to destroy the Overlord Cold Blood Hall? Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the rest mumbled to themselves. Ever since Lu Ming's second clone had briefly explained the situation in the central continent, they were still in disbelief and had not recovered from the shock. Senior, everything is real now. Let's adjust the coordinates of Cold Blood Hall and accept the teleportation requests. Lu Ming said. Good, haha, this way, DIE can't trap us. Bai Shijin laughed. The others also smiled. If they could connect with the overlord forces of Central Continent, they would no longer have to be afraid of DIE's siege. Even if the yin and yang formation was broken, they would have a way out. They immediately began to adjust their coordinates. The teleportation formation could only be used with the consent of both parties. It could not be used just because one party wanted to. Otherwise, if one of them were to suddenly teleport to another force, wouldn't they be able to break through from the inside? Naturally, that was impossible. Chapter 1175. 1175 Chapter 1175 Returning to the Talisman Amulet sect. It didn't take long for the coordinates of both sides to be matched. The altar of the interterritory teleportation formation glowed with light, and a black vortex appeared. Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others stared at the vortex. Soon, two figures emerged from the vortex. Lu Ming, Bai Shijin and the others were overjoyed. Of the two figures, one was Lu Ming while the other was, of course, Xian Yanqing. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing stepped out of the vortex and appeared in front of Bai Shijin and the others. Is this your clone? Xian Yanqing's big eyes were filled with curiosity as he looked at Lu Ming. Why? Do you want a kiss? The second body suddenly laughed. This was Lu Ming's consciousness entering the second body and speaking. Xian Yanqing's face turned red and he glared at Lu Ming. The second body pointed at Lu Ming and took a step forward. It shrunk rapidly and entered the space between Lu Ming's eyebrows, sitting cross-legged in his sea of consciousness. At that moment, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the rest were looking at Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing in shock. Lu Ming, what's your cultivation? What realm have you reached? Bai Shijin asked. In fact, he had already seen through Lu Ming's cultivation. He just found it hard to believe. Peak 4th level spiritual god realm. Senior, what's wrong? Lu Ming said. Sigh. Bai Shijin and the others gasped. It had only been 2 years or so. Back then, Lu Ming had set off from the East Wilderness to the Central Continent, and his cultivation was only at the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. However, In 2 years, not only had Lu Ming crossed the path of the spiritual god realm, but he had also reached the peak of the 4th level of the spiritual god realm. This was truly too shocking. They were well aware of how difficult it was to advance one level after reaching the spiritual god realm. However, it seemed to be no difficulty for Lu Ming. And they looked at Xie Nianqing. They could naturally see Xie Nianqing's cultivation. He was at the peak of the 3rd level of the spiritual god realm. Strong, he was too strong. Most importantly, Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing were still so young. They were only in their 20s. It was shocking that they had already reached this stage at such a young age. In comparison, the paragons of the Talisman Amulet sect paled in comparison to Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing. Perhaps, Lu Ming can really lead the Talisman Amulet sect to rise, they thought to themselves. Buzz. At this moment, the teleportation array shook slightly, and 2 more figures appeared. It was Xie Lun and Mo Yi. Subconsciously, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others used their spiritual senses to scan Xie Lun and Mo Yi. Their expressions changed drastically as they cried out in alarm. Emperor! It's the Emperor! 2 emperors! Bai Shijin and the others exclaimed in shock. They were on high alert and their eyes were filled with shock. Seniors, this is Xiel Wan, Senior Xie. This is Mo Yi Demon Emperor. Lu Ming hurriedly introduced. Chaotic Heaven's Divine Warrior, Xiel Wan. Bai Shijin and the others were shocked. The name of the Chaotic Heaven's Divine Warrior was not only known to the powerhouses of the Central Continent, but also the East Baron, the South Underworld, and other territories. Naturally, Bai Shijin and the others knew about him. After that, Bai Shijin and the others hurriedly paid their respects to Xiel Wan and Mo Yi. Mate. Xiel Wan nodded casually, and spread out his spiritual sense. I didn't expect the Talisman sect to not be here either. Back then, it was a famous sect in the Eastern Baron territory. Xiel Wan spoke slowly, making Bai Shijin and the others feel a little embarrassed. Senior Xie, I'll take you around. Lu Ming smiled. He was in a good mood after returning to the Talisman Amulet sect after 2 years. This place was the force that truly belonged to Lu Ming. It was the force that he could control. Xiel Wan's power was merely an alliance. Xiel Wan nodded, and the group stepped on the air and flew into the distance. On the way, Xiel Wan glanced around and nodded to himself. It seems that I've underestimated Lu Ming. Other than not having an emperor, he's not considered weak. What a powerful junior. He's trying to break through to the emperor realm. Once he does, he'll be extraordinary. Xiel Wan's eyes flickered with light as he looked to the north. Lu Ming knew that Xiel Wan had sensed the 9 Suns paragon. In the past 2 years, Supreme 9 Suns had been in seclusion, trying to break through to the position of emperor. Father, mother. Immediately, Lu Ming's gaze shifted to the front. In front of them, Yang Guangtu formed a cloud with his vital essence and brought Lu Yuntian, Li Ping, Hua Kai, Bai Chishue, and the others toward them. Obviously, they had received the news that Lu Ming had returned. Initially, only a few people knew that Lu Ming had left for the Central Continent and stayed behind to guard the Talisman Amulet sect. Other than Bai Shijing, Yang Guangtu, and a few other supreme martial artists, only Lu Ming's parents knew. However, ever since Lu Ming's true identity was exposed during the million-year sacrificial battle in the sacred city, the news of Lu Ming's appearance in the East Baron had spread after the masters of the Wang family, the Jiang family, and the Divine Emperor had returned. The Empyrean Divine Palace had publicly exposed that Lu Ming's second body was fake outside the Yin and Yang mountain. The rest of the Talisman Amulet sect then knew that Lu Ming had left the Yin and Yang mountain and headed to the Central Continent. Of course, no one would have thought that the twin forbidden spell was such a wondrous secret technique. They all thought that the second body of Lu Ming in the Talisman sect was a disguise by someone else. Now that Lu Ming had returned and they received the news, they naturally wanted to meet him. Lu Ming pulled Xie Nianqing and flew forward to greet Lu Yuntian and Li Ping. Father, mother, Ming it's good that you're back. Although Lu Yuntian and Li Ping knew that Lu Ming had been safe and sound through his second body, they were still overjoyed to see his real body. Then, the two of them looked at Xie Nianqing. After a moment of surprise, they smiled. Li Ping happily held Xie Nianqing's hand and said, Miss Nianqing, long time no see. Ming-er has finally brought you back. Good, good. Uncle, auntie. Xie Nianqing's little face was slightly red as he bowed to Lu Yuntian and Li Ping. The two elders nodded repeatedly, extremely happy. Ha, this must be sister-in-law. She's truly a national beauty and a rare one in the world. Yang Guangtu laughed out loud, causing Xie Nianqing's face to turn even redder. Big brother Yang. Lu Ming greeted Yang Guangtu, Hua Kai, and the others. In the crowd, Bai Chishue looked at Xie Nianqing with a lonely look in her eyes. Is this the woman Lu Ming likes? Back then, in a fit of anger, she caused a great war in 9 dragons. She is truly devastatingly beautiful. Only a woman like her is worthy of Lu Ming. Bai Chishue sighed in her heart and forced a smile on her face. She stepped forward and greeted Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing. Lu Ming then introduced Xiel Wan and Mo Yi to Yang Guangtu and the others. However, Lu Ming had only introduced them by name and not by their cultivation level. Only Yang Guangtu could sense Xiel Wan and Mo Yi's cultivation level, and his heart trembled. Father, mother, you should return to your residence first. I still have some matters to attend to with the seniors. I'll come find you later, Lu Ming said. All right, it's fine. You can go ahead with your work, Lu Yuntian said. Then, they went back. Yang Guangtu stayed behind. Senior Xie, the Talisman Amulet sect is currently besieged by the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace. The Palace Master of the Emperor God Divine Palace is an emperor. Do you have the confidence to deal with him? Lu Ming said. Chapter 1176. 1176 Chapter 1176 Taking charge of the Talisman Amulet sect. It just so happened that Xiel Wan and Mo Yi were here. It would be best if he could use Xiel Wan to get rid of Martial Emperor Di. Xiel Wan did not say anything. He stood in the air, his eyes looking to the east as if he was sensing something. In the eastern part of the Talisman Amulet sect, Martial Emperor Di was cultivating in seclusion. At this time, he seemed to sense something. His eyes suddenly opened and shot out 2 extremely bright lights. A shocking aura rose from his body. Who is spying on me? Martial Emperor Di said slowly. Within the Talisman Amulet sect. Boom. Xiel Wan's expression suddenly changed. A powerful aura rose from his body involuntarily, but then he quickly restrained it. What a powerful cultivation. I didn't expect such a person to be born in the East Baron territory. Xiel Wan's brows furrowed slightly as he spoke in a grave tone. Lu Ming was shocked. Could it be that Martial Emperor Di was so powerful? Even Xiel Wan was serious. Lu Ming, the Martial Emperor Di you mentioned is very powerful. If I was at my peak, I could defeat him. But now, I am not his match. Let's not mess with him for the time being. Give me some time and I will not be afraid of him. Xiel Wan spoke slowly, causing the expressions of Lu Ming, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others to change. Was Martial Emperor Di really so powerful? Even Xiel Wan had taken this matter so seriously, bluntly saying that he wasn't a match for them. All right. Lu Ming nodded. He knew very well that Xielun had been suppressed for 30,000 years. Although he had recovered a little, he was far from his peak condition. It was too difficult to recover to his peak condition. Lu Ming, let's go back to Coldblood Hall and rest for a few days before heading to Northern Plains. If you want to fight in Northern Plains, you can come here in 3 days. Let's go, Xiel Wan said to Lu Ming. Then, he and Mo Yi stepped on the air and returned to Coldblood Hall through the inter-territory teleportation formation. After that, Lu Ming bade farewell to Bai Shijin and the rest. He held Xie Nianqing's hand and headed to Lu Yuntian and Li Ping's residence. In the next few days, Lu Ming stayed at the Lu family's residence. When he had the time, he would visit Hua Kai and the mystical sword sect. 2 years ago, Lu Ming had left behind a large number of resources. After 2 years, everyone had made great progress. For example, Hua Kai and Pang Shi had both reached the martial king realm. His father, Lu Yuntian, had also become a martial king. Among them, his 2 disciples, Zhuang Xiaoshan and Zhuang Shiro, had made the fastest progress. They had already reached the advanced level of the martial king realm. However, this progress was still far from Lu Ming's expectations. This time, Lu Ming left more resources for the Lu family, Hua Kai, and the others. There were all sorts of intent crystals, spirit pills, spirit herbs, spirit weapons, and more. 3 days later, Lu Ming, Yang Kuangtu, and the Talisman Amulet Sect's elders and founding members were gathered in the Talisman Amulet Sect's conference hall. Lu Ming was sitting on the main seat at the top of the hall. This was what Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others had strongly requested. Currently, Lu Ming's cultivation had long entered the spiritual god realm and had even reached the peak of the 4th level of the spiritual god realm. He was already qualified to be in charge of the Talisman Amulet Sect. Therefore, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the rest strongly requested for Lu Ming to be the head of the sect. In the future, the Talisman Amulet Sect would officially be handed over to Lu Ming. Lu Ming was a Zongzi to begin with. Zongzi meant that when his cultivation level increased and he was able to take charge, he would be able to succeed the position of sect leader. Although Lu Ming's current cultivation was still lacking, the Talisman Amulet Sect did not have an emperor. Therefore, the conditions were not that high. It was about right. Lu Ming did not reject too much and accepted it calmly. He really needed his own strength now. Seniors, I have already explained the situation in the central continent, please feel free to speak your mind. Lu Ming said. Zongzi, we have sealed off the East Continent and been trapped here for years. We know nothing about the situation in the central continent. You know better than us. We will listen to you and do whatever you say, Bai Shijin said. This old master also has the same intention, Du Songjue said. Haha, Lu Ming, I'll do whatever you say. I'll fight with you. Yang Kuangtu gulped down a few mouthfuls of wine and laughed. Then I'll tell you my thoughts. Right now, the central continent is in chaos, all the major forces are fighting and attacking each other. The strong will become stronger while the weak will become weaker. We can't just sit and wait for death, we have to take the initiative to attack and increase our strength. Right now, I have formed an alliance with Sovereign Chaotic Heaven, and also with Floating Mountain. Now that Sovereign Chaotic Heaven wants to invade Northern Plains, we cannot miss this opportunity. I plan to gather a group of experts to fight with me. Firstly, we can obtain resources, and secondly, we can temper our sleevers. In the future, after we occupy Northern Plains, we can link up with Northern Plains, that way, we can advance and retreat as we wish. What do you think? Lu Ming shared his thoughts. Then we'll do as Zongzi says. Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others nodded. Lu Ming, I'll go on an expedition with you. I've been in the Talisman Amulet Sect for a few years and I haven't fought anyone. It's really boring. Yang Kuangtu said, his eyes filled with a strong desire to fight. In the past, Yang Kuangtu was a battle general of the Empyrean Heaven Divine Palace and was a battle fanatic. He had been cooped up in the Talisman Amulet Sect for the past few years and it was really unbearable. Now that he heard that he could go to war, he naturally wouldn't miss it. His heart was already itching. I'll also fight with Zongzi. I'll go too. 2 patriarchs from the Talisman sect spoke up. One of them was an elder of the puppet sect, Meng Chong. One of them was Jiang Ku, an elder of the Fu sect. The 2 of them were both supreme martial artists. Good, with the 3 of you together, I can rest assured. Lu Ming was overjoyed. After that, everyone discussed the specific details. In addition to Yang Kuangtu, Meng Chong, and Jiang Ku, the 3 supreme martial artists, a group of other powerful people had also been transferred to follow Lu Ming on the expedition. Some of the younger generation had also chosen to follow Lu Ming as a form of training. It was very difficult to improve on the path of cultivation if one only cultivated arduously. One needed to take risks and kill in order to make a breakthrough. After the plan was made, the news began to spread. Then, Lu Ming led hundreds of people into the inter-territory teleportation formation and headed for Cold Blood Hall. The teleportation formation of Cold Blood Hall glowed and Lu Ming appeared. Not long after Lu Ming's appearance, a voice transmission Jade Talisman was sent. Ciel Wan had invited Lu Ming to the conference hall for a discussion. Lu Ming led Yang Kuangtu, Meng Chong, and Jiang Ku to the meeting hall. Ciel Wan, Mo Yi, and some supreme beings from the Myriad Demon's Abyss were all present. When some of the supreme beings from the Myriad Demon's Abyss saw Lu Ming, they scanned Yang Kuangtu and the others with their spiritual senses. Their eyes flickered slightly. They did not expect that Lu Ming would have a supreme being powerhouse by his side. They knew that they had underestimated Lu Ming. In the past, they had thought that Lu Ming was alone. Now, they realized that they were wrong. Lu Ming had his own forces. Lu Ming, sit. Ciel Wan pointed at the seat beside him. Lu Ming did not stand on ceremony and sat down beside Ciel Wan. Chapter 1177. 1177 Chapter 1177 Conquering Northern Plains. Let me tell you about the next plan. The Demon God Valley of Northern Plains is the backup plan I left behind. But 30,000 years have passed, and I do not know the exact situation. I will first rush to the Demon God Valley alone and take control of it. Lu Ming will be in charge of this place. Wait for my news. After I control the Demon God Valley, I will activate the Inter-Territory Teleportation Formation and connect it with Coldblood Hall. Then, they will take the teleportation formation to Northern Plains. Ciel Wan explained his plan. It was obvious that this plan was the best one at the moment, so no one raised any objections. Alright, since that's the case, I'll cut to the chase. I'll set off immediately. Lu Ming, I'll leave this place to you. Ciel Wan stood up and took a step forward. As he stepped forward, space naturally split open, and Ciel Wan's figure disappeared into a spatial rift. After Ciel Wan left, Lu Ming made arrangements for the Talisman Amulet sect. Big Brother Yang, please keep this Emperor Spirit Tower. In front of a courtyard, Lu Ming called out to Yang Kuangtu and handed him a small fiery red pagoda. It was the Emperor's spiritual weapon he had obtained from the secret realm of the Saint Mansion. It was called the Emperor Spirit Tower. Previously, he had lent it to Ciel Wan for the time being. After Ciel Wan recovered his Emperor cultivation, he returned it to Lu Ming. The Emperor Spirit Tower was a fire attribute treasure with a fire domain. Yang Kuangtu's bloodline was that of the three-legged golden crow. His firepower was unparalleled in the world, so it was the most suitable for Yang Kuangtu to use. It would be even more powerful. This is an Emperor spiritual weapon. Yang Kuangtu's face suddenly changed as he used his telegnosis ability to scan the area. Lu Ming, this is too valuable. I can't accept it. Big Brother Yang, do you still need to be so polite with me? Besides, the Emperor Spirit Tower can only unleash its greatest power in your hands now that the war is imminent. It won't be of much use in my hand. Lu Ming pushed the Emperor Spirit Tower and it flew towards Yang Kuangtu. Seeing how determined Lu Ming was, Yang Kuangtu did not decline further and kept the Emperor Spirit Tower. To be honest, the Emperor Spirit Tower was really useful to him. The fire domain on it was helpful to his cultivation and would help him break through to the Emperor realm. Lu Ming, thank you. After Yang Kuangtu kept it, he cupped his fists at Lu Ming solemnly. His expression was rare to see solemnity and seriousness. Haha, Big Brother Yang, I'm not used to seeing you like this. Lu Ming laughed and strode away. After returning to his residence, Lu Ming's glabella lit up and the figure of his second body appeared. An array disc appeared in Lu Ming's hands and he flew to the second body. The second body caught it and started to inscribe inscriptions and arrays with both hands. The second body's Tao of inscription was much stronger than 2 years ago. In an instant, dense inscriptions flew into the array disc. This array disc was the one the profound Sky Saint had given him in the secret realm of the Saint Mansion. As long as his second body controlled the array disc, he could enter the secret realm of the Saint Mansion and obtain the inheritance of the profound Sky Saint. Very soon, the array disc was glowing brightly and formed a huge vortex. He nodded slightly at Lu Ming, then stepped into it and disappeared. After the second body disappeared, the vortex also disappeared. Everything was ready. Lu Ming waited with peace of mind. What was surprising was that not long after, the Floating Mountain sect sent 2 Supremes, saying that they would assist Lu Ming in his battle in Northern Plains. Lu Ming was naturally overjoyed. With 2 more supreme martial artists, their strength was naturally stronger. Time passed quickly. Soon, 2 days had passed. At this moment, Lu Ming received a message from Ciel Wan. It was a success. Ciel Wan had successfully taken control of the Demon Deity Valley. Everyone in the Demon Deity Valley, including the Emperor, had surrendered to him. Obviously, like the Myriad Demon's Abyss, Ciel Wan had a backup plan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to subdue an overlord so easily. Next, the inter-territory teleportation formations were connected. Let's go. Lu Ming waved his hand and the army set off. As for Coldblood Hall, only a few people were left to guard it. More than 100,000 soldiers were teleported to the Demon God Valley through the teleportation formation. Lu Ming was the last group to set off with Yang Guangtu and the others. Demon God Valley was one of the 5 overlord forces of Northern Plains. It was very powerful and had an emperor overseeing it. It was located in the vast mountains. There were countless valleys of various sizes inside, and demonic energy filled the air, making it suitable for those of the demonic Tao to cultivate. On the second day of Lu Ming's arrival at the Demon God Valley, the army gathered in a huge valley, with Ciel Wan and Lu Ming standing at the forefront. Beside them, there were 2 other people. One was Mo Yi, and the other was a burly old man called Chu Luo, the emperor of the Demon God Valley. In the valley, the Myriad Demon's Abyss, the Demon God Valley, and the talisman sex experts that Lu Ming had brought with him gathered. Northern Plains has a total of 5 overlord forces, each of them is very strong. If we want to take down the other 4 overlord forces, we have to strike as fast as lightning. Right now, they still do not know about Demon God Valley. If we wait for them to make sufficient preparations, our battle will become much more difficult. I have discussed with Commander Lu. He and I will each lead an army to attack 2 forces. I will lead the army alone and be in charge of the Golden Wave Cliff and the Light Dragon Pagoda. Commander Lu, Mo Yi, Chu Luo, you will lead a large army and be in charge of Mountain Piercing Sect and 100 Beasts Tribe. Take them down with lightning speed, that way, Northern Plains will be under our control, Ciel Wan announced. Yes. The army received the order. Although the people from the Demon God Valley, Chu Luo, and the others were puzzled as to why Ciel Wan would form an alliance with Lu Ming, they did not ask much. They only had to follow Ciel Wan's orders. Boom. 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 A huge warship appeared in the sky. Lu Ming and Ciel Wan took 1 warship each and flew in 2 different directions. The first target of Lu Ming's army was the Mountain Piercing Sect. Enemy attack. As they neared the Mountain Piercing Sect, a loud roar could be heard. In the Mountain Piercing Sect, countless rays of light shone as the sect's protective formation rose. Auras burst forth as figures flickered and appeared in front of the mountain gate of the Pangolin sect. Boom. 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 Lu Ming's warship stopped a few thousand miles away from the Pangolin sect. Lu Ming was the first to step out of the ship, followed by the dense army. They stepped out of the warship and appeared in front of the Pangolin sect. Who has come? Die. An angry roar came from within the Pangolin sect. A terrifying aura soared into the sky and suppressed everything within tens of thousands of miles. A tall figure, covered in a yellow glow, appeared at the front of the Pangolin sect. An emperor. Obviously, this was the emperor of the Mountain Piercing sect. Bang. Bang. Chu Luo and Mo Yi stepped forward and came to the front. The emperor's might bloomed from their bodies and pressed forward. Emperors. 2 emperors. Countless people in the Pangolin sect exclaimed in shock. There were actually 2 emperors gathered outside the Mountain Piercing sect. It seemed that they had come with ill intentions. Chapter 1178. 1178 Chapter 1178 Yang Guangtu fights. Chu Luo, it's you? Why did you bring your men to my Mountain Piercing sect? The emperor of the Pangolin sect looked at Chu Luo and asked loudly, Emperor Wanshan, I advise you to lead the entire Mountain Piercing sect to surrender. Otherwise, the Mountain Piercing sect will be destroyed today, Chu Luo said coldly. Haha, surrender? Don't even think about it, Chu Luo. I knew it. You're a wolf with wild ambitions. It's useless even if you get help. At worst, We'll fight to the death today. The Myriad Mountain Emperor let out a mocking laugh. If you don't surrender, then fight. As soon as Tsu'luo finished speaking, his aura exploded and became even more terrifying. Boom. On the side, Mo Yi also exploded. The might of an emperor was vast and mighty. His demonic chi formed a pillar of demonic chi that shot up into the sky. Boom. Boom. Mo Yi and Tsu'luo stepped forward at the same time. The earth and sky trembled under their feet. Two terrifying demonic lights shot toward the mountain-piercing sect. Two earth-shaking explosions were heard. The entire mountain-piercing sect shook violently as if there was a magnitude 10 earthquake. The mountain-piercing sect's protective formation trembled madly. Under the bombardment of the two demon emperors, it finally could not resist and collapsed. In northern plains, there were no cultivators who were skilled in the Tao of inscription, thus, the sect-protecting formation was not very strong. Kill. Die. As soon as the formation was broken, the Myriad Mountain Emperor roared and soared into the sky. Countless mountains appeared around him, and there seemed to be hundreds of them. This was the Myriad Mountain Emperor's domain, known as the Myriad Mountain Domain. Wanshan, since you're looking for death, I'll send you on your way. Die. Chu Luo shouted coldly, and endless black demonic light spread out around him. Devil Domain. At the same time, Mo Yi also released his demonic domain, and together with Chu Luo, they charged towards Emperor Wanshan. The three sovereigns immediately began an intense battle in the sky. A terrifying fluctuation was emitted in the sky. This Tsu'luo is so strong. He's even slightly stronger than Mo Yi. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. Chu Luo's combat strength was slightly stronger than Mo Yi's, so he was able to gain the upper hand in just a few moves. Kill. At this moment, Lu Ming waved his hand and the army moved out, charging towards the pangolin sect. Kill. The disciples of the mountain-piercing sect also rushed out. The two sides engaged in an intense battle. Buzz. Beside Lu Ming, a fiery red ray of light shot out. It was Yang Kuangtu, who had his eyes on one of the supreme beings. It was a 3-meter-tall man with bulging muscles. His entire body was emitting an earthy yellow light. He also stared at Yang Kuangtu. Kill. The other party shouted, and a broad axe appeared in his hand, which he swung towards Yang Kuangtu. Yang Kuangtu's body was covered in flames as he threw a punch. Boom. The flaming fist accurately hit the broad axe. The broad axe shook violently, and the tall and burly figure of the other party also shook violently, then retreated madly. Kill. Yang Kuangtu's combat strength was unrivaled. Terrifying flames spread towards Lu Ming as he continued to bombard him with punches. The other party tried his best to block, but with every move he blocked, he would be forced back a few steps. After a few moves, his body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock. They were both supreme martial artists, but how could Yang Kuangtu's battle prowess be so strong? Explode! He shouted as he executed the bloodline fusion. However, what awaited him was an even more violent storm of attacks from Yang Kuangtu. Yang Kuangtu turned into a 3-legged golden crow. He flapped his wings and appeared in front of his opponent. He grabbed with his claws and broke the bloodline fusion. Then, his wings were like flaming heavenly blades, cutting his opponent's body in half. Even the spirit god could not escape. A supreme martial artist had been killed just like that, shocking everyone in the surroundings. Kill. After that, Yang Kuangtu turned his attention to another supreme martial artist and charged towards him. Join hands, let's join hands. The supreme martial artist shouted and joined forces with another supreme martial artist to fight Yang Kuangtu, but they were still falling. A few years ago, during the Battle of 9 Dragons, Yang Kuangtu was able to fight against 3 supreme masters alone. Several years had passed, and although Yang Kuangtu hadn't broken through to the Emperor realm, he had made great progress. His battle prowess was much stronger than before, and he could easily suppress 2 supreme martial artists. In the end, another supreme martial artist joined the battle and barely managed to stop Yang Kuangtu. What a powerful paragon! In the Myriad Demon's Abyss, the Supremes from the Demon God Valley who had followed them here were all secretly shocked by the scene. They were shocked by Yang Kuangtu's strength, But they also knew that the force behind Lu Ming could not be underestimated. With Yang Guangtu fighting several great masters alone, the others were much more relaxed. Originally, the number of supreme beings on Lu Ming's side was more than the mountain-piercing sects. As a result, it was completely one-sided. The essence realm of the earth. There are many people in the mountain-piercing sect who cultivate the essence realm of the earth. There are also other essences. Lu Ming's eyes started to shine. Unlike Cold Blood Hall, the mountain-piercing sect cultivated only one intent realm. Although the main cultivation realm of the mountain-piercing sect was the mountain and earth intent realm, there were many who cultivated other types of intent realms. Fire concept, water concept, thunder concept, wind concept. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. His figure dashed out like a flash of light and appeared beside the pangolin sect's powerhouses who had died in battle. The devouring power burst out and devoured the other party's intent runes and blood essence. Refine, refine. Lu Ming controlled the 9 dragon bloodlines and began to refine them frantically. At the same time, his figure flickered and he rushed to another place. Every time he devoured, he would sense it and feel that the other's intent realm was in line with his. Only then would he start devouring. As he devoured and refined the 9 dragons bloodline, Lu Ming's 5 intents began to improve slowly. A paragon's corpse. Finally, Lu Ming came to a supreme being's corpse. It was the supreme being that Yang Guangtu had killed. Lu Ming took out a jade bottle and used his essential core to draw out 9 drops of blood essence that looked like resplendent blood-colored gemstones. He then stored them in the jade bottle. I need to get more blood essence of a supreme martial artist. Lu Ming's eyes darted around. It was too difficult for him to improve his bloodline now. Previously, when he refined a supreme blood essence, his 9-dragon bloodline did not improve at all. It was still at the 8th level of the divine level. However, Lu Ming had a feeling that his bloodline was improving after refining the supreme blood essence and was approaching the 9th level of the divine level. This meant that the supreme being's blood essence was still very useful. He only needed a small amount. As long as he had enough supreme blood essence, his bloodline would advance sooner or later. Boom! All of a sudden, the mountain rocks beneath Lu Ming's feet shook and a stone spear condensed. The sharp spear thrust out from under Lu Ming's feet, aiming for his throat. Sneak attack. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. He did not dodge or evade. His neck trembled slightly, and the 5-colored concept revolved around him. He used the prison-suppressing heaven technique, and a powerful force burst out. Bang! The stone spear immediately crumbled. Lu Ming had long cultivated the prison-suppressing heaven technique to the point that he could attack every part of his body. He could even attack the throat. It was very powerful. Attack as defense. Chapter 1179. 1179 Lu Ming's goal. Not far away, an expert of the mountain-piercing sect was shocked. Kill. Lu Ming's killing intent exploded. He took a step forward and charged towards the pangolin sect powerhouse. This person had a cultivation of the 7th level of the spiritual god realm. However, in Lu Ming's hands, he did not even last 2 moves before his defense was broken by Lu Ming and his heart was pierced. A one-shot kill. After killing this person, Lu Ming continued to look for a target to devour. The battle was extremely intense. The experts of the mountain-piercing sect fell like raindrops. As Lu Ming devoured, he kept the storage ring. As time passed, Lu Ming had devoured the essence of heaven and earth from dozens of spiritual god realm powerhouses. It's enough, it's enough. Spirit god experts all have very strong self-consciousness. If I absorb too much, even after refining it, it will be very impure and affect my foundation. I need time to polish it. Lu Ming's figure moved and he retreated to the outside of the battlefield, back to the warship. Xian Yanqing wasn't on the warship. He was fighting outside to train himself. Lu Ming asked Meng Chong and Jiang Ku to protect Xian Yanqing in secret in case anything happened to him. Lu Ming stood on the warship, refining the concept runes that he had devoured while observing the situation of the battle. In the sky, the Myriad Mountain Emperor was completely suppressed by Chu Luo and Mo Yi. He was already injured and his defeat was set in stone. It was the same for the battlefields below the Emperor level. The mountain-piercing sect was powerless to turn the situation around. Wanshan, just surrender. Don't make any pointless struggles, Chu Luo said coldly. Don't even think about it. Unless you kill me today, don't even think about having a good time. Emperor of Myriad Mountains roared with a cold killing intent. He began to charge, planning to escape. As long as he escaped, he would definitely take revenge in the future. The revenge of an emperor was terrifying. As long as the emperor was not here, no one would be his opponent. Then I'll kill you today. Chu Luo revealed a strong killing intent, and so did Mo Yi. They used all their strength, determined to kill Emperor Wanshan. Clang. At this moment, a fiery red light bloomed from below, and the surrounding temperature rose sharply. While Yang Kuangtu was fighting the three great supremes, the Emperor Spirit Tower emerged above his head. It trembled slightly and a ring of fire domain spread out. The three supreme beings of the Pangolin sect were hit by the Imperial Spirit Tower's territory. Their faces turned pale as they spat out mouthfuls of blood and were sent flying. An Emperor spiritual weapon, one of the supreme beings shouted in shock. Kill. Yang Kuangtu took out his Emperor Spirit Tower, and his combat strength was raised to a terrifying level. He stepped forward, and his Emperor Spirit Tower enlarged, suppressing one of the supreme beings. No. The supreme being was locked down by the power of the Emperor Spirit Tower and could not escape. He could only resist passively. Bang! The supreme being was completely defenseless under the suppression of the Emperor Spirit Tower. He was torn into pieces and died on the spot. After killing one supreme being, Yang Kuangtu moved on to kill another supreme being. The remaining two supreme beings' expressions changed drastically. They didn't dare to fight and retreated frantically. Yang Kuangtu stared at one of them and chased after him. Finally, he caught up and killed him. Blood essence of a supreme being. Lu Ming moved again. He rushed toward the supreme being's corpse to collect the blood essence. Of course, he wasn't going to let go of the supreme being's storage ring either. He planned to give it to Yang Kuangtu after he kept it. Lu Ming had collected the blood essence of the two supreme beings killed by Yang Kuangtu. He had also collected the blood essence of the other supreme being who had been killed by others. As Lu Ming was the commander, the people on his side naturally would not stop him. As for the Pangolin sect, they were busy with their own affairs. Naturally, no one stopped Lu Ming. Devouring a portion of true Yuan energy, Lu Ming cast the devouring power and devoured the vital essence energy of a few 8th and 9th level spiritual God realm experts. Then, he returned to the warship and continued to refine. His intent realm was improving, so his cultivation base could naturally improve as well. As the energy continued to be refined and transformed into essential core, Lu Ming began to break through to the 5th level of the spiritual God realm. Boom, boom, boom. His true chi was boiling and surging, causing thousands of waves as it continuously attacked the bottleneck. At this moment, the battle between the emperors in the sky was even more intense. The Myriad Mountain Sovereign tried his best to escape, but he was attacked with all his might by Chu Luo and Mo Yi. At this moment, the Myriad Mountain Sovereign was already severely injured. His body was almost split open, and he was covered in blood, making him look like a blood man. You can't kill me. Explode. The Wanshan Emperor's eyes were filled with madness. His Wanshan territory burst forth, and his spirit body glowed. With a loud roar, his body was really about to split apart. At the same time, his territory exploded crazily, and a terrifying power swept towards Tsuluo and Mo Yi. This lunatic! Tsuluo and Mo Yi roared in anger. The Myriad Mountain Emperor was using a self-mutilating method to block them, trying to buy himself a chance to escape. It was too difficult to kill an emperor who was trying to escape. Buzz! After blocking Chu Luo and Mo Yi, the Wanshan Emperor took this opportunity to escape. However, at this moment, a fiery red giant pagoda shot out from the sky and suppressed Emperor Wanshan. It was Yang Kuangtu. At the critical moment, he rushed over with the Emperor Spirit Tower and attacked Emperor Wanshan. Damn it, it's an Emperor weapon. Die! Emperor Wanshan roared and struck out with both hands, hitting the Emperor Spirit Tower. The tower shook violently, and Yang Guangtu was forced to retreat. But in the end, he still managed to block Emperor Wanshan. Yang Guangtu's cultivation was already extremely close to the martial royal realm. With the addition of his king's spiritual weapon, his combat strength could barely contend with a king. With this short delay, Chu Luo and Mo Yi had already arrived. Wanshan, your fate has already been decided. Die! Chu Luo shouted and joined hands with Mo Yi, unleashing a terrifying attack that enveloped Emperor Wanshan. Clang! Yang Guangtu controlled the Emperor Spirit Tower and charged toward Emperor of Mountains again. The heavily injured Wanshan Emperor was surrounded by 3 experts and could no longer escape. The Emperor's blood splattered across the firmament. In the end, the Myriad Mountain Emperor was killed by 3 powerful experts and fell in the sky above the mountain-piercing sect. The Emperor of a generation had fallen just like that. Seeing this scene, Lu Ming was still shocked. So what if he was an emperor? So what if he dominated the divine wilderness continent? Didn't he still fall? And this was the divine wilderness mainland, the overseas mainland, the larger mainland, and even the center of the primordial realm. The Yuan continent was more dangerous, with more powerful cultivators. Even with the cultivation of an emperor, they could die if they moved, unable to protect themselves. Becoming an emperor is not my end. I need to climb to a higher realm. Otherwise, I can't even protect myself, let alone my family. At this moment, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. His heart and his vision had become higher. In the past, his goal had been to break through to the emperor realm and kill Di Yi. But now, his goal was not limited to the emperor. His goal was to become a saint, or even a saint. Perhaps only by reaching a cultivation level that could dominate the primordial realm could one truly control their own fate and protect their family. Lu Ming sighed in his heart. The emperor is dead. The old ancestor has fallen. The mountain-piercing sect's disciples and elders cried out when they saw this scene. Some of them were terrified, while others were sorrowful. Chapter 1180. 1185th Level Spiritual God Realm. The Myriad Mountain Emperor is dead. Why are you still not surrendering? Chu Luo stood high in the sky and looked down. His voice spread throughout the mountain-piercing sect, and the vast emperor's pressure covered the mountain-piercing sect, making it hard for people to breathe. I surrender. I'm willing to surrender. I also surrender. After the emperor was killed, many disciples and powerhouses of the mountain-piercing sect finally lost the courage to fight and surrendered. You traitors, have you forgotten the emperor's kindness to you? There were also people who were more unyielding and would rather die than surrender, so they were naturally killed on the spot. This was war, and no one would be soft-hearted. Seeing this, more people from the mountain-piercing sect surrendered. Next, they tidied up the battlefield and made arrangements for the aftermath. Lu Ming did not participate. He sat cross-legged on the warship and focused on refining the concept runes and energy to break through to the next realm. Boom! Not long after, a powerful aura burst out from Lu Ming's body and soared into the sky, attracting many gazes. You've broken through? Chu Luo, Mo Yi, and the other powerhouses looked at Lu Ming with shock in their eyes. He had only wandered around the battlefield once, and his cultivation had actually broken through. Furthermore, he had actually broken through to the 5th level of the spiritual god realm at such a young age. This was truly shocking. Lu Ming's aura burst out, but he retracted it in the next moment. However, he did not end his cultivation. Instead, he continued to refine the concept runes that he had devoured. He had devoured the intent runes of dozens of experts. They were at least at the 6th level of the spiritual god realm and above. His comprehension of the heaven and earth intent realm was very profound. Lu Ming would have to put in a lot of effort to refine them. Half an hour later, the battlefield had been tidied up, and the army had gathered, ready to fight the next force, the 100 Beasts tribe. Speed was of paramount importance in war, so they had to set off immediately. At this moment, Lu Ming had finished his refinement. He stood up and went to the front of the army. Let's go to the 100 Beasts tribe. Lu Ming gave the order. The army once again boarded the warships, and they set off for the 100 Beasts tribe. As for those from the mountain-piercing sect who had surrendered, They had all been engraved with formations in their sea of consciousness. They would follow them to fight against the 100 Beasts tribe, leaving only a few people behind to guard the main headquarters of the mountain-piercing sect. The warship broke through the air and flew toward the 100 Beasts tribe at an astonishing speed. Lu Ming sat cross-legged in one of the rooms on the warship and continued to refine the concept runes. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. The warship was already approaching the 100 Beasts tribe. At this moment, Lu Ming had finally refined all the intent runes that he had devoured. The wind, fire, thunder, and water concepts have all reached the upper tier of level 4. The earth concept has also reached the peak of the lower tier of level 4. It's only one step away from the upper tier of level 4. My cultivation has also increased to the 5th level of the spiritual god realm. The increase this time is really huge. However, I've increased too quickly and am now filled with impurities. My foundation is not stable and I can't continue to devour and increase my cultivation in a short period of time. I need to polish and stabilize my foundation. Lu Ming had a smile on his face. At the 5th level of the spiritual god realm, coupled with the great progress of the intent realm of heaven and earth, Lu Ming's combat strength had also improved greatly. Lu Ming got up and walked out of the room. He came to the deck of the warship and looked into the distance. In front of him, tens of thousands of miles away, countless sharp towers appeared. These sharp towers were all made of stone and stood on the vast grassland like sharp spikes. This was the 100 Beasts tribe. It could be said that it was the strongest tribe in northern plains, an ancient tribe with a long history. Every single spire was glowing. The light from every spire gathered together and formed a large formation that enveloped the 100 Beasts tribe. Countless figures appeared in the 100 Beasts tribe. Some rode on war beasts and floated in the air, while others stood on the ground and formed battle formations. Regardless of whether they were male or female, they were all very strong, burly, and full of valiance. It was obvious that the 100 Beasts tribe had already received the news of the battle at the mountain-piercing sect and had made preparations in advance. The warship stopped. Lu Ming and the rest flew out of the warship and stopped in front of the 100 Beasts tribe. Boom! Boom! Two terrifying auras burst forth. Chu Luo and Mo Yi stepped out, and their emperors might spread out towards the 100 Beasts tribe. At this time, an aura also rose up from the 100 Beasts tribe. A burly middle-aged man stepped out and floated in the air. His body exuded a shocking aura. Without a doubt, this was an emperor, the leader of the 100 Beasts tribe, the barbarian emperor. Chu Luo, it's really you, but I don't think you have such a big appetite. First, you destroyed the mountain-piercing sect, and now, you've come to my 100 Beasts tribe. It seems that you're a man of the chaotic heavens, divine warrior, the barbarian emperor said. Earlier, Ciel Wan had also led his army to attack the other forces. It was obvious that the barbarian emperor already knew of their origins. Barbarian emperor, since you already know, I advise you to surrender. Otherwise, you will end up like the mountain-piercing sect. Chu Luo said coldly. Haha, the 100 Beasts tribe has existed for countless years. We have never surrendered before a battle. If you want to attack us, then let's fight. The barbarian emperor laughed, his voice incomparably domineering. With that, a glistening yellow staff appeared above the barbarian emperor's head. It floated above the barbarian emperor's head and grew rapidly, emitting shocking fluctuations. Emperor spiritual weapon, you also have an emperor spiritual weapon. Chu Luo and Mo Yi exclaimed at the same time, their eyes filled with shock. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Back in the Saint Mansion's secret realm, there were a total of 4 king spiritual weapons. He had obtained one, while Yang Potian, Tuoba Shu, and Wuliang Monk had each obtained one. Lu Ming swept his gaze around and indeed, he saw Tuoba Shu in front of the 100 Beasts tribe. Tuoba Shu came from the 100 Beasts tribe, so he must have obtained this emperor spiritual weapon from the secret realm of the Saint Mansion. Let's fight. Even if the 100 Beasts tribe is defeated, you won't have an easy time. The barbarian emperor's eyes revealed a malevolent expression. Chu Luo and Mo Yi's expressions were grave. The barbarian emperor's combat strength was already very strong, even slightly stronger than Chu Luo's. With the addition of the Emperor's spiritual weapon, his combat strength was even stronger. Even if the two of them joined forces, they might not be able to win. Even with the addition of Yang Guangtu, whose combat strength had barely reached the Emperor realm, it was still hard to say. Even if they could win, if the barbarian Emperor risked his life, it was not impossible for him to drag them down with him. Even if they could win this battle, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. However, at this point, he had no choice but to fight. Barbarian Emperor, since you're so stubborn, we can only fight and destroy your 100 Beasts tribe. Chu Luo spoke and stepped forward, his fighting intent even stronger. Wait a moment. At this moment, Lu Ming suddenly spoke. Chu Luo frowned and glanced at Lu Ming, a hint of displeasure in his eyes. But at the thought of Xielwan's words, he held back and stopped in his tracks. Lu Ming stepped out and came to the front. Most of the people from the 100 Beasts tribe were looking at Lu Ming. They were secretly surprised. They did not know Lu Ming's background. He could actually make an emperor listen to his orders. A wait a minute was heard, stopping one of the emperors. Lu Ming, it's him. In the 100 Beasts tribe, Tuoba recognized Lu Ming. Chapter 1181. 1181 Chapter 1181 Betting on one move. What? His Lu Ming. So, this person is Lu Ming, the one who defeated the Paragons in the Central Continent's holy city. Tuoba's words shocked everyone from the 100 Beasts tribe. Back then, in the battle of the million-year sacrificial ceremony in the ancient Saint dynasty, Lu Ming had defeated the prodigies of the big shots in succession. His name had long shaken the divine wilderness continent, and he was regarded as a peerless genius, second only to Long Chen. He did not expect to see Lu Ming here. At this moment, not only Chu Luo, Mo Yi and the rest, but even the people from the 100 Beasts tribe were curious. They did not know why Lu Ming had stopped Chu Luo. Lu Ming's gaze swept across the 100 Beasts tribe and finally landed on the barbarian emperor. He said in a clear voice, "The 100 Beasts tribe has a long history. Wouldn't it be a pity if it was destroyed? Barbarian emperor, why don't I make a bet with you?" Bet. Many people were surprised. Bet? How to bet? You want to bet with me? Bet on what? How do we bet? The barbarian emperor asked. Let's bet on the problem between us and the 100 Beasts tribe. If I win, the 100 Beasts tribe must surrender unconditionally. If I lose, I'll take my men and leave, never stepping foot in the 100 Beasts tribe's territory again, Lu Ming said. These words made everyone's heart tremble. This was a huge gamble, a gamble on the fate of the 100 Beasts tribe. How should we bet? The barbarian emperor asked again. It's simple. Tuoba is a peerless Heaven's Pride expert with unparalleled combat strength. This bet is on me and Tuoba's battle. Lu Ming said. Lu Ming, let's not bet on this. I know your combat strength is high and I'm not your match. Before Lu Ming could finish, Tuoba interrupted him. That's right, Lu Ming. I can tell that your cultivation has reached the 5th level of the spiritual god realm. Tuoba is no match for you, the barbarian emperor said. The 100 Beasts tribe and Tuoba were shocked by his words. This was especially so for Tuoba. He was very clear that back in the holy city, Lu Ming was only at the 3rd level of the spiritual god realm. It had only been a short while, but Lu Ming had already entered the 5th level of the spiritual god realm. This was too terrifying and abnormal. You too, let me finish. What I mean is that in my battle with Tuoba, I will suppress my realm to the same level as him. Tuoba's current cultivation should be at the peak of the 3rd level of the spiritual god realm, so I will also suppress my realm to the 3rd level of the spiritual god realm. Moreover, the bet is only one move. I will defeat Tuoba in one move. If I can't defeat Tuoba in one move, I will lose this battle, Lu Ming said. Everyone was shocked by his words. Defeating Tuoba in one move at the same cultivation level? How was that possible? What? You suppressed your realm to the 3rd level of the spiritual god realm and defeated me with one move? Tuoba widened his eyes and glared at Lu Ming with a look of fury. This was an insult to him. That's right. Tuoba, Do you dare? Lu Ming said. Why wouldn't I dare? Lu Ming, I promise to fight you. No one at the same level as me can defeat me in one move. Tuoba strode forward, his eyes filled with rage as he glared at Lu Ming. That's right. Tuoba did not believe that anyone in the world could defeat him in one move. It was impossible. Long Chen was able to defeat him in one move during the Battle of the Holy City because Long Chen's realm was higher than his. At that time, Tuoba had just reached the 3rd level of the spiritual god realm, while Long Chen was definitely at the 4th level of the spiritual god realm, or even stronger. He was also very clear about Lu Ming's combat strength. When Lu Ming fought with Dark Child back then, it was rather difficult. He had to fight many moves before he could defeat Dark Child. Tuoba's combat strength wasn't any weaker than Yang Potion's. Yang Potian was ranked 3rd among the 5 overlords of Central Continent. Even if he was weaker than Dark Child, he was only a little weaker. And now, Tuoba was even stronger. Furthermore, he had recently achieved a breakthrough in one of his secret skills, which was more towards defense. Tuoba had always been inclined towards defense. Even Yang Potion's spatial intent couldn't break through his defense. Now that his defense was even stronger, his confidence had increased greatly, and he thought that he could suppress Yang Potian. Therefore, he was not afraid of Lu Ming when they were at the same level. Now, Lu Ming actually said that he would defeat him in one move. This was an insult to him and it made him furious. Patriarch, let him fight me. We'll bet on this. I'll make them withdraw their troops. Tuoba looked at the barbarian emperor. The barbarian emperor frowned slightly. He felt that Lu Ming was a mystery. However, he had the same thoughts as Tuoba. In the history of the 100 Beasts tribe, Tuoba's talent was extremely rare. He was much stronger than when he was young. He did not believe that Lu Ming could defeat Tuoba in one move when they were at the same level. All right, I'll bet with you on this battle, the barbarian emperor said after a moment of silence. All right, barbarian emperor, let's make a blood oath. After all, this is a matter of great importance. It would be bad if one of us reneges later, Lu Ming said. But I want to know if you can make the decision. If you agree and they go back on their word, what then? The barbarian emperor looked at Chu Luo and Mo Yi. I am the supreme commander. I have full authority to make decisions now, Lu Ming said. The barbarian emperor and the others were shocked by his words. Lu Ming was actually the supreme commander, leading a large army, including the emperor. It was somewhat unbelievable. Commander, please reconsider. Chu Luo, Mo Yi, and the others spoke to Lu Ming telepathically. They had heard of Tuoba's name before. It was hard for them to believe that Lu Ming could defeat Tuoba in one move when they were at the same level. No need to say anything, I have my own plans. Lu Ming waved his hand and interrupted Chu Luo and the rest. Seeing this, the barbarian emperor set his mind at ease and took a blood oath with Lu Ming. If Lu Ming was defeated, they would retreat. If Lu Ming won, the 100 Beasts tribe would surrender unconditionally. Patriarch, what if Lu Ming really wins? A supreme being from the 100 Beasts tribe sent a worried message to the barbarian emperor. I've also considered this matter. Now that the world is in chaos, all the major forces are at war with each other. No force can stay out of it and will be implicated. The war will come sooner or later. If it's not handled well, there will be a disaster of extermination. If Lu Ming can really defeat Tuoba in one move, it will prove that he is extremely talented. His future will be limitless. If he doesn't die, it's very possible that he will dominate the divine wilderness in the future. It might not be a bad choice for us to join him. The barbarian emperor secretly transmitted his thoughts to the supreme being. As the barbarian emperor, he had lived for a long time. Naturally, he would not agree to the bet with Lu Ming just because of a moment of rashness. He had considered it carefully. In fact, Lu Ming had already considered this. His current cultivation level was still weak. If he only relied on his cultivation level, it would be impossible for him to intimidate the others. Therefore, he had to show his advantage. His advantage was his talent and his age. He was still young and was at the golden stage of a martial artist. His future was limitless. Only by displaying his amazing talent would these big shots be intimidated and be willing to join him. Just like how Ciel Wan had formed an alliance with him, it was also because of this that he valued him. Lu Ming, let's fight. Tuoba stepped forward and stood in front of Lu Ming. A huge mace appeared in his hand, and his aura rose like an enraged savage beast. He glared at Lu Ming. Chapter 1182. 1182 defeated in one move, unifying Northern Plains. Pay attention. Let's go, Lu Ming said as the aura on his body rose. It stopped when Lu Ming's aura rose to the third level of the spiritual god realm. He suppressed his cultivation to the third level of the spiritual god realm, the same realm as Tuoba. Groan. Groan. A dragon's roar rang out from within Lu Ming's body. Dragon energy burst out one after another. A purple glow spread across Lu Ming's skin as his muscles bulged, filled with explosive power. Tuoba's expression turned serious. Not daring to be negligent, he raised his cultivation to the maximum. At the same time, a bloodline appeared above his head. Tuoba's bloodline was a stone. To be precise, it was a stone as large as a mountain. It was crystal clear like a huge diamond. Tuoba used his bloodline fusion and turned into a huge stone. His voice came from within, Lu Ming, come on. His voice was filled with confidence. At that moment, he had performed the blood meridian fusion. Putting everything else aside, he was confident that no one in his generation could beat him in terms of defense. He did not believe that Lu Ming could defeat him in one move. Haha, he's definitely going to win. Lu Ming can't possibly break Tuoba's defense. He's too confident. Overconfidence is arrogance. The people of the 100 Beasts tribe were all overjoyed. Fight. The third bloodline emerged above Lu Ming's head. In an instant, Lu Ming's body was filled with endless killing intent. A wisp of energy from the third blood meridian gushed into Lu Ming's body, and he was enveloped in a layer of blood-red light. As Lu Ming's cultivation level increased, the power he borrowed from the third bloodline also increased and became stronger. Boom! Lu Ming took a step forward and threw a punch at Tuoba. One could vaguely see the shadow of the prison-guarding stele on the fist, which gave off a heaven-suppressing aura. At the spine, the fragment of the prison-guarding stele trembled slightly, making the power of the prison-guarding heavenly technique reach its maximum. This. Lu Ming threw a punch and the expressions of the 100 Beasts tribe powerhouses changed drastically. The power of Lu Ming's punch was too terrifying and shocking. Block it. Tuoba could also feel the terrifying power of this punch. Before the punch even arrived, the powerful pressure already made his heart tremble. His bloodline trembled, and a layer of light appeared, increasing his defense. Boom. Finally, Lu Ming's punch landed on Tuoba's blood meridian. The light screen trembled violently and broke as the fist landed on Tuoba's bloodline. A deafening sound rang out, and the space shattered like a spider web. Catcher. Compared to Tuoba's bloodline, Lu Ming's fist was very small. However, wherever his fist landed, Tuoba's bloodline emitted a cracking sound. A crack appeared on the huge diamond-like rock. In an instant, the crack expanded rapidly and finally exploded. Tuoba's original body was revealed among the rubble. His face was pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body flew backward like a cannonball and fell to the ground in an arc. Boom. Tuoba fell to the ground and only managed to get up after a long while. The entire place was silent. You won. Chu Luo, Mo Yi, and the others muttered to themselves, their eyes filled with shock. Mo Yi had been cultivating in the Myriad Demon's Abyss for many years and didn't know much about the geniuses in the outside world. However, when Tuoba unleashed his bloodline, it was a 9th-level divine bloodline, which was even higher than his talent when he was young. He had such amazing talent, but he was defeated by Lu Ming in one move. Moreover, they were of the same level. This caused him to be greatly shocked. He was defeated. How could this be? The people of the 100 Beasts tribe also looked at this scene in shock, unable to say a word for a while. The peerless Heaven's favorite of the 100 Beasts tribe, a Heaven's favorite that only appeared once in 100,000 years, someone who was seen as the future Heaven's favorite of the 100 Beasts tribe, had actually been defeated by someone of the same level in one move. This was hard to believe, and hard to accept. They looked at Lu Ming and then at Tuoba Shi in a daze, as if they were in a dream. He's been defeated. Tuoba Shi stood up and spoke with difficulty. There was a dejected look in his eyes. He was actually defeated by Lu Ming in one move when they were at the same level. As proud as he was, it was hard for him to accept this. At the same time, he was extremely shocked. Compared to the battle at the Holy City, Lu Ming was much stronger. Was Long Chen, who was known as the #1 expert in the world, still a match for Lu Ming? Not only was Tuoba Shi shocked, but the barbarian emperor was also extremely shocked. This kid is unbelievable, unbelievable. The barbarian emperor's eyes flickered as he thought of a sentence. Barbarian emperor, I've already won. It's time for you to fulfill your promise, right? Lu Ming's gaze turned to the barbarian emperor. Don't worry, the people of the 100 Beasts tribe always keep our word. Since you've won, then the 100 Beasts tribe will surrender. The barbarian emperor's voice reverberated throughout the entire area. The people of the 100 Beasts tribe sighed, but no one spoke. Indeed, the people of the 100 Beasts tribe were true to their words. Moreover, they also understood that if they were to fight today, the 100 Beasts tribe would not be able to escape the fate of destruction, just like the mountain-piercing sect. But, at this moment, the barbarian emperor's tone changed. His gaze swept across Chu Luo, Mo Yi, and the others before landing on Lu Ming. Lu Ming, the 100 Beasts tribe will only surrender to you and no one else. Chu Luo and Mo Yi's expressions changed at this. The barbarian emperor's meaning was very clear. He only wanted to surrender to Lu Ming and not to anyone else, not to Xiao Wan. All right, I'll be the commander, so you'll naturally surrender to me. Lu Ming grinned. This was the result he wanted. If the 100 Beasts tribe surrendered to him, they would be considered his power. In the future, they would definitely stand on his side. In this way, his strength would truly surge, and he would be able to stand on equal footing with Xie Lun. Brother Tuoba, I apologize for my offense earlier. Lu Ming cupped his fists at Tuoba Shi. Brother Lu's talent is something I'm ashamed of. Tuoba Shi sighed and shook his head, but his eyes were filled with admiration. After that, the 100 Beasts tribe kept their formation and held a ceremony to surrender Lu Ming. Not long after, Lu Ming received news that Xiel Wan had also been successfully taken down. On Xiel Wan's side, one was exterminated while the other surrendered. One of the overlords refused to surrender, and its emperor was personally killed by Xiel Wan. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Xiel Wan's combat strength was truly astonishing. He could kill an emperor on his own, and that was before he had fully recovered. He wondered how powerful he would be if he had recovered to his peak. At this point, the strength of the 5 overlords of Northern Plains had either been destroyed or surrendered, not to mention the other small forces, they all surrendered. Northern Plains was basically unified. Several days later, the news of Northern Plains being unified spread throughout the divine wilderness continent, shocking the world. Although the central continent heroes were shocked, they had no time to care about anything else. The battle in the central continent was even more intense. The major forces were busy with their own affairs. The Imperial Xie family and the heaven-suppressing Divine Legion had been fighting fiercely in the geocentric sea in the central continent. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. The remaining overlord forces that did not participate in the alliance were also in a chaotic battle. Only the eastern barren territory, the southern nether, and the western desert were peaceful. Chapter 1183. 1183 Refining the Blood Essence of a Supreme Being. In a secret chamber in the Demon God Valley, Lu Ming sat cross-legged with a jade bottle in his hand. There were 9 blood essences in the bottle that looked like blood diamonds. This was the blood essence of a supreme martial artist. It had been 7 days since the 100 Beasts tribe surrendered. In 7 days, almost everything had been arranged. Moreover, the demonic chi in the Demon God Valley was abundant, which was conducive to Xian Yanqing's cultivation. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing came to the Demon God Valley to guard it, while Xiaowan led a group of people to guard the 100 Beasts tribe. Moreover, Lu Ming had already linked the Talisman Amulet sect's inter-territory teleportation formation with the teleportation formations of the major forces in Northern Plains. Now, the Talisman Amulet sect could move freely and could teleport to Northern Plains at any time. These few days, many people from Talisman sect had been sent to Northern Plains for training and tempering. After making all the arrangements, Lu Ming planned to start his closed-door cultivation. The bloodline of the 9 dragons emerged. It opened its mouth and sucked in a drop of supreme blood essence. Then, it began to refine it. It would be much easier to devour a drop of supreme blood essence, unlike the last time when he almost burst his 9-dragon bloodline. A few hours later, a drop of supreme being blood essence was refined. Lu Ming continued to devour another drop. One drop after another, in less than 2 days, all 9 drops of blood essence had been refined. The bloodline of the 9 dragons hasn't advanced yet. Lu Ming was speechless. In total, he had refined the blood essence of 2 supremes, some perfected spiritual god, 9th tier, and 8th tier spiritual god, but his 9-dragon bloodline had not improved. The difficulty of raising one's level to divine level 9 was truly too astonishing. The 8 golden chakra rings around the 9-dragon bloodline shone brilliantly. Lu Ming could feel that he was getting closer and closer to the 9th level divine level bloodline. I don't believe it, continue. Lu Ming took out another jade bottle. There were still 9 drops of supreme blood essence in it. Lu Ming continued to refine. In the tallest stone tower in the 100 Beasts tribe, Xiaowan sat on the top, and below him sat the 2 sovereigns, Chu Luo and Mo Yi. Ancestor Devil, Lu Ming's influence is getting bigger and bigger. The barbarian emperor of the 100 Beasts tribe has directly said that he will only surrender to Lu Ming and obey his orders. In addition, he has allied with the Floating Mountain sect and the Talisman Amulet sect. The future is not good for us, Chu Luo said to Xiaowan. That's right. Furthermore, Lu Ming has shocking talent and is improving at an abnormal speed. I'm afraid he'll be able to reach the Emperor realm within 20 years. Once he reaches the Emperor realm, I'm afraid it'll affect your authority and prestige, Ancestor Devil. Mo Yi also spoke. With a smile on his face, Xiaowan raised his wine cup and slowly sipped. After Chu Luo and Mo Yi finished speaking, Xiaowan smiled faintly and said, "Your vision is still too narrow, too short-sighted." What? Chu Luo and Mo Yi were both stunned and confused. Mo Yi, as you all know, Lu Ming has unparalleled talent. In the history of the divine wilderness continent, he is rarely seen. With such talent, what do you think his future will be like? As long as this kid doesn't die, his future will be unpredictable, Chu Luo said after a moment of thought. Mo Yi also nodded. That's right. Lu Ming's talent is far inferior to mine when I was young. Moreover, the most terrifying thing about him is that I can't see through him at all. This child's first bloodline is the 9 dragons bloodline. It's needless to say that it's one of the legendary top 10 battle beasts with endless potential. But this kid's second bloodline is even more amazing. It's the prison guarding Steely. You might not have heard of it, but I've read about it in an ancient book overseas. It seems to have a shocking background. I can't see through this kid's third bloodline at all. I don't have a clue at all. However, I feel that it's unfathomable. It's as if there's an unimaginable and extraordinary power hidden within. That's why I formed an alliance with him. If he goes to the Yuan continent in the future, there is a high possibility that he will join those big sects. Then, in the future, he will probably recommend us to join those big sects. You are all emperors. When you pursue higher realms, you must look far ahead. Xiaowan explained his thoughts in detail. It's actually so shocking. The fiend ancestor's vision is far beyond us. Zuluo and Mo Yi's eyes were filled with shock after hearing this. They only knew that Lu Ming was very talented, but he did not have as deep and far-reaching vision as Xiaolan. If they could join a big sect in the Yuan continent, it would be a fatal temptation for them. The reason why the central continent was in chaos and the war was all because of a heavenly king token, a token that allowed one to join the Sky King Hall, a major power of the Yuan continent. Therefore, the higher Lu Ming's talent is, the better it is. If he can break through to the Emperor's position one day, what's wrong with me helping him wholeheartedly? In the future, you must all wholeheartedly listen to his orders, understand? Ciel Wan warned. Yes, don't worry, fiend ancestor. Tsuluor and Mo Yi nodded. Yes, Tsuluor. Return to the Demon God Valley and help Lu Ming guard it, Ciel Wan ordered. Naturally, Lu Ming did not know about this incident. He had been refining the Supreme Blood Essence for several days. Lu Ming refined the blood essence of 2 Supremes in a row. However, his 9-dragon bloodline still did not advance. It remained at level 8 divine level. Lu Ming had already refined the blood essence of 4 supreme martial artists. Just how much supreme blood essence is needed to advance? Lu Ming sighed and was somewhat speechless. Now, he had refined all the supreme martial artists' blood essence in his hands. Forget it, I'll slowly improve in the future. Lu Ming was helpless. He could only put aside the matter of the blood meridian and start to polish his conception and condense his essential core. After the battle at the mountain-piercing sect, Lu Ming had improved a lot, especially his concepts. All 5 of his concepts had improved by a large margin. He needed time to slowly polish them and stabilize his foundation. Time flew by, and 2 months passed in a flash. After spending 2 months, Lu Ming's foundation was finally completely stable and impregnable. In the past 2 months, the outside world had not changed much. Central Continent was still in the midst of a huge battle, there were no signs of it stopping. On a mountain peak in the Demon God Valley, there was a stone table. Lu Ming and the Barbarian Emperor sat opposite each other. Lu Ming was seeking guidance from the Barbarian Emperor. The Barbarian Emperor had also cultivated the Earth mentality. Of course, the Barbarian Emperor had already transformed the Earth mentality into the Earth domain, so his comprehension of the Earth mentality was naturally very profound. The Barbarian Emperor told Lu Ming everything he knew, which greatly inspired Lu Ming. He felt that it would not be long before his Earth Essence realm would break through. Thank you for your guidance, Senior Barbarian Emperor. Lu Ming raised his wine cup and toasted the Barbarian Emperor. Haha, you're too kind, General Lu. It's your comprehension that has surprised me, the Barbarian Emperor said with a smile. As Lu Ming was the commander, the Barbarian Emperor and the others addressed him as Commander Lu. Although there was a huge age gap between the two, they got along very well. They drank and talked about martial arts. Kaila. At this moment, the sky suddenly split open. A huge hand reached down from the sky and grabbed at Lu Ming. The vast aura made Lu Ming and the Barbarian Emperor's faces change. Chapter 1184. 1184 Ciel Wan fights Die. Who is it? The Barbarian Emperor let out a long roar, and his aura burst forth. He soared into the sky and punched at the giant hand. Boom. There was a shocking boom, and then the Barbarian Emperor's body trembled. He was actually no match for the Barbarian Emperor and was blasted down. The huge hand did not stop and continued to grab Lu Ming. Enveloped by this huge hand, Lu Ming felt as if the space around him had been locked down. Lu Ming's body was pressed down by endless gravity, making it difficult for him to move. Die! Lu Ming shouted. He was very familiar with the aura of this big hand. It was Die, a martial emperor. Lu Ming did not expect that martial emperor Die would make a move at this time. Previously, Lu Ming had thought that Die might take action. However, the Demon God Valley had a sovereign. Lu Ming thought that Die would be afraid. Boom, boom, boom. 8 streams of dragon energy burst forth in Lu Ming's body. At the same time, his third bloodline emerged, and a powerful force surged into Lu Ming's body. Break, break. Lu Ming roared in his heart and exploded with all his strength, trying to break open the surrounding space. However, the surrounding space was extremely firm. With Lu Ming's current strength, he could not even move an inch. Who is it? You're looking for death. A long roar was heard. From another direction in the Demon God Valley, A demonic light shot up and a vast demonic blade slashed at the giant hand. Boom! After the barbarian emperor's punch and the saber, the huge hand finally collapsed and disappeared. The pressure on Lu Ming's body was also lifted. Lu Ming's body felt lighter and he regained his freedom. Buzz! With a flash of demonic light, Tsuoluo appeared beside Lu Ming. The barbarian emperor also came to Lu Ming's side. An iron rod floated above the barbarian emperor's head, emanating a terrifying aura. It was an emperor spiritual weapon. The two of them looked at the sky with a grave expression. A golden light flashed in the sky, and a figure stepped out of the spatial crack. It was Martial Emperor Di. Di of the East Baron, what do you want to do by coming to the Demon God Valley? Do you want to start a war with us? Chu Luo coldly shouted. In the divine wilderness continent, there were only so many emperors, so they naturally knew each other. I'm only here to take Lu Ming away. This has nothing to do with you. Di's entire body bloomed with golden light. He stood high in the sky, like a high and mighty emperor, looking down on the common people. Take away General Lu. What a joke. Di, not only can you not take anyone away today, but you can't even leave. The barbarian emperor's eyes flickered with a malevolent light. Buzz. Whoosh. At this moment, from all over the Demon God Valley, there were sounds of people flying through the air. The commotion just now had alarmed the entire Demon God Valley. Stop. Don't come over. Lu Ming's voice was heard and everyone stopped in their tracks. When the emperor took action, the others could not help at all. Two people did not stop and directly flew over. They were Xian Yanqing and Yang Kuangtu. Lu Ming. Xian Yanqing held Lu Ming's hand and looked at Di in the sky, looking worried. Di. Yang Kuangtu licked his lips. The Emperor Spirit Tower floated above his head, revealing a powerful fighting spirit. If you don't hand it over, I'll personally take it. Di's cold voice rang out. He clenched his fist in the air and a golden combat sword appeared. Buzz. Whoosh. The golden combat sword emitted an infinite amount of golden light. The sword light was as large as a mountain, and a vast pressure bloomed. It slashed down violently towards the barbarian emperor and the others. Attack! The barbarian emperor shouted and rose to the sky, holding the iron rod in his hand. The iron rod grew rapidly, turning into a giant rod tens of thousands of meters long, and swept toward Di's sword light. At the same time, the demonic chi on Chu Luo's body soared to the sky, and he slashed out a huge saber light toward the sword light. Above Yang Kuangtu's head, the Emperor Spirit Tower expanded rapidly and crashed toward the sword radiance in the sky. Boom! 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 3 terrifying explosions sounded in succession. First, it was the barbarian emperor. He held a huge rod and smashed it against the sword light. His whole body trembled as if he was facing an undefeatable force. His body fell down like a cannonball. Then, Chu Luo's demonic blade was crushed by the sword radiance and finally collided with Yang Kuangtu's Emperor Spirit Tower. Bang! 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 The barbarian emperor, Chu Luo, and Yang Kuangtu were sent flying one after another. They staggered in the sky and retreated hundreds of miles, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Yang Kuangtu's condition was the most serious. His face was pale and bloodless. In one move, Di had injured 2 emperors and Yang Kuangtu. He had displayed his terrifying combat power. How can he be so strong? Chu Luo shouted in disbelief. The barbarian emperor and Yang Kuangtu were both shocked. The 3 of them had to work together to block Di's sword, but they were all injured. It was unbelievable. They had all dealt with Di before, but they had never expected that Di's combat power would be so strong. No one can stop me from taking Lu Ming away, Di said coldly. He stretched out his hand and a big golden hand formed out of thin air. It exuded a vast pressure and grabbed Lu Ming. Don't even think about it. Yang Kuangtu, the barbarian emperor, and Chu Luo shouted loudly. They used their strongest move to stop Di. However, Di took a step and 3 golden sword lights condensed in the air. They hit the 3 of them and forced them back again. The golden hand did not stop and continued to grab Lu Ming. Boom! At this moment, the space in front of Lu Ming cracked open and a black fist radiance shot out. It collided with the golden hand and both of them disappeared. Then, a tall figure stepped out. Fiend Ancestor. Chu Luo was overjoyed to see this person. Thank you, Chaos. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Xiao Wan stood in front of Lu Ming, looked at Yi, and said, "It's rare to have an expert like you among the younger generation. But with me here, you can't take Lu Ming away. Chaotic Sky Emperor, you have been suppressed for 30,000 years and are no longer the same as before. Do you really think you can fight me?" Yi spoke. Even in the face of the Chaotic Sky Divine Warrior, he was still full of confidence. "We'll know if we can fight him or not after we try. Let's go up and fight him." Xiao Wan took a step forward and rushed up to the sky. Yi glanced at Lu Ming. He took a step forward and, together with Xiao Wan, rushed into the sky. Boom! An extremely terrifying rumble suddenly sounded from an unknown height. A bright light flashed out like a sun exploding in the sky. It could be seen even from millions of miles away. Boom! 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 Following that, terrifying rumbles rang out continuously in the sky. Rings of light lit up one after another, as if many suns had exploded at the same time. The scene was extremely shocking. Lu Ming and the others looked up into the sky, but they could only see a dazzling light. They could not see the figures of Yi, Martial Emperor, and Xie Lun. So strong. Lu Ming furrowed his brows and was secretly shocked. The fluctuations and auras caused by the battle between Xiao Wan and Yi were obviously much stronger than that of an ordinary emperor. What realm had they reached? My eyes! Someone exclaimed. Some people with low cultivation looked up at the battle in the sky. Their eyes were blinded by the light and they didn't dare to watch anymore. Chapter 1185. 1185 Yi's Realm. In the sky, there were hundreds of explosions, as if hundreds of suns had exploded. If that kind of power landed on the ground, it could destroy the Earth and penetrate the Earth's crust, causing a terrible disaster. At this moment, the sky suddenly quieted down. All the fluctuations seemed to have suddenly disappeared without a trace. How is it? Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Buzz. At this moment, a figure flickered, and Xiao Wan appeared. At this moment, Xiao Wan's breathing was a little shallow. A trace of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. He had actually been injured. Chu Luo, the barbarian emperor, and the others found it unbelievable that Xiao Wan had been injured in the battle with Martial Emperor Yi. Ancestor Devil, how is Yi? Chu Luo asked. Yi has retreated. Xiao Wan spoke, his eyes grave. I didn't expect the East Continent to have such a powerful cultivator. I can't defeat him with my current combat strength. Senior Xie, what realm has Yi reached? Lu Ming asked. To be honest, Yi's combat power was beyond his imagination. He had thought that Yi was just an ordinary emperor. Now, it seemed that he was not. He was much stronger than an ordinary emperor. After this period of time, Xie Lun had recovered and was stronger than he had been a few months ago. However, he was still injured in the battle with Yi. Lu Ming, the Martial Emperor realm is the same as the other realms. It is divided into 9 levels, but the difference between each level is huge. As for the Divine Wilderness Continent, the conditions are too poor. It's not suitable for emperors to cultivate at all. To be able to break through to the Emperor realm is already the limit. It's too difficult to go further. Hence, most of the emperors in the Divine Wilderness Continent are at the first-level Martial Emperor realm. For example, Barbarian Emperor, Chu Luo, and the rest, as well as most of the emperors from the Overlord forces in Central Continent, are all at the first-level Martial Emperor realm. Xiao Wan introduced. Chu Luo and the Barbarian Emperor nodded. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that the sovereigns he had met were only at the lowest level of martial emperors. Xiao Wan continued to explain, once someone breaks through to lever 2 martial royal realm, his combat strength will be greatly improved. He will be able to suppress and even kill other martial royal realm experts. The gap between lever 1 martial royal realm experts is very obvious. I guess there are some martial royal realm experts in the royal family and the heaven-suppressing divine army, and my cultivation back then was at the 3rd level of the martial royal realm. Now, I have recovered to the peak of the 2nd level. However, it will be extremely difficult for me to recover to the 3rd level. Firstly, the conditions of the divine wilderness continent are too poor. Secondly, after being suppressed for so many years, my source has been injured. It will be very difficult for me to recover to the peak without a few years. Is Di's cultivation also at the peak of the 2nd level of the martial royal realm? Lu Ming asked. That's right. Di's cultivation is indeed at the peak of the Lever 2 martial royal realm. He's not far from the Lever 3 martial royal realm. I feel that Di can break into the Lever 3 martial royal realm at any time. By then, he will be unrivaled in the world and no one in the divine wilderness mainland can defeat him, Xiaowan said, his eyes grave. Di is so strong. Yang Guangtu clenched his fists tightly. Lu Ming's eyes were solemn. He and Di had to fight a long time ago, but now it seemed that this battle would be more difficult than he had imagined. I have to improve my strength as soon as possible. Now, the 2nd body has obtained the inheritance of the mysterious Sky Saint and is improving rapidly. My martial cultivation can't fall behind. If my martial cultivation and the 2nd body both break into the Emperor realm, I can suppress Di even if he breaks through to the 3rd level of the martial Emperor realm. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with confidence and fighting spirit. If the main body and the secondary body both broke through to the Emperor realm and joined forces, their power would definitely be beyond imagination. All of you can leave. With a wave of Xiaowan's hand, everyone below the Emperor level dispersed. Xiaowan then looked at Lu Ming and said, Lu Ming, you don't have to worry too much. The conditions in the divine wilderness continent are really bad. It's extremely difficult for a martial artist in the Emperor realm to make a breakthrough. It's not that easy for Di to break through to the 3rd level of the martial royal realm. He might not be able to break through for a few years, or he might not be able to break through in his entire life. It's possible. Back then, I was stuck at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial royal realm and was unable to break through to the 4th level. He can't do anything to you if he can't break through to Lever 3 martial royal realm. Xiaowan smiled and consoled him. Thank you, Senior, I'm fine. The stronger Di is, the stronger my motivation will be. I will kill Di with my own hands this time. This day will not be too long. Lu Ming's eyes flashed with a sharp glint. Good, haha. Xiaowan patted Lu Ming's shoulder and laughed. What? At this moment, Xiaowan suddenly turned his gaze to the northern sky. The others were stunned. What did Xiaowan discover? Could it be that Di had returned? However, they soon realized. In the sky to the north, a huge warship broke through the void and was flying at high speed. Boom, boom, boom. As the warship sailed past, it let out a deafening roar. It was like a divine sword that split the space in half. Everyone's expression changed. Could it be that they were coming for them? Who in the divine wilderness continent had the guts to do that? Moreover, they came from the north. Very quickly, they realized that they had been overthinking. The warship was not heading towards them, but was flying past the Demon God Valley. From a distance, the warship was carved with beautiful patterns, and there was a misty light flowing on it. Look, there are people on the warship. Chu Luo shouted. As expected, they saw a middle-aged man at the bow of the warship. He was wearing a black robe and stood with his hands behind his back. He was just standing there casually, but he seemed to have a domineering temperament. At that moment, the black-robed middle-aged man seemed to have sensed Lu Ming's gaze and looked over. With just a glance, Lu Ming could feel his heart thumping. It was like the vast starry sky, and he felt extremely small. At the side, Xian Yanqing's grip on Lu Ming's hand tightened and his face turned pale. However, this person only glanced at them and didn't look at them again. He turned his head. So strong. This person is so strong. It's hard to estimate. The barbarian emperor's voice rang out. Lu Ming turned around and was shocked. At that moment, the barbarian emperor's forehead was covered in cold sweat. His eyes were filled with shock. Third-level martial emperor realm, Ciel Wan muttered to himself, his brows tightly furrowed. Everyone was shocked. How is that possible? Third-level martial emperor? How can there be a third-level martial emperor in the divine wilderness continent? Tuluor exclaimed in disbelief. Who said they are from the divine wilderness continent? I have seen the patterns on that warship overseas 30,000 years ago. If I am not wrong, they are from the divine ruins continent, Ciel Wan said. The divine ruins continent? Why would the people from the divine ruins continent suddenly come to our divine wilderness continent? The barbarian emperor asked in surprise. Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, and Yang Guangtu, on the other hand, looked puzzled. The divine ruins continent. Where was it? From the name, it must be from a mainland overseas. Why would someone from a mainland overseas suddenly descend into the divine wilderness? Chapter 1186. 1186 People from the continent of the divine ruins. The divine ruins continent is a continent that is much stronger than the divine wilderness continent. There are many experts here, so why are you here today? Lu Ming, do you want to go and take a look? Ciel Wan looked at Lu Ming and asked. Good. Let's go take a look. Lu Ming was also very curious about the sudden arrival of the divine ruins continent. The two of you stay here and guard the place just in case. Lu Ming and I will go and take a look. Xie Lun instructed Chu Luo and the barbarian emperor, and the two of them nodded. Xiao Qing, big brother Yang, wait for me here. I'll be back with senior Xie. Lu Ming said to Xian Yanqing and Yang Guangtu. Lu Ming, you have to be careful. Xian Yanqing warned. Lu Ming nodded. Let's go. Let's go. Ciel Wan shouted. The demonic light wrapped around Lu Ming, and he stepped into the air and flew out, following the warship from the divine ruins far behind. The warship from the continent of divine ruins kept flying south at a very fast speed, and soon, it flew out of Northern Plains territory and arrived at Central Continent, flying towards the center of Central Continent. The people from the continent of the divine ruins seemed to be flying towards the place where the imperial family and the heaven-suppressing divine army are fighting. Ciel Wan softly said. Could it be that one of the two sides invited a helper? Lu Ming's expression changed slightly. If that was the case, the situation in the divine wilderness continent would change drastically. The warship broke through the space and flew extremely fast, quickly approaching the central continent. There's a huge battle ahead, Ciel Wan said as he gazed into the distance. Lu Ming's expression turned grave as he sensed a terrifying pressure coming from the south. He sensed that there was a slight fluctuation in the space. There was definitely a terrifying battle going on, because it could be determined that the battle was still very far away from here. The warship from the continent of the divine ruins suddenly stopped here, and the black-robed middle-aged man standing at the front of the warship looked into the distance. He then stepped out and headed south. Let's go. Ciel Wan and Lu Ming went around the warship and headed south as well. Boom. Boom. Not long after, he heard a terrifying fluctuation in the sky far away. Lu Ming could vaguely see two figures fighting in the sky. The strength of his aura had actually surpassed that of an ordinary emperor. So strong. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. The two people fighting had extremely terrifying combat strength. They were above the barbarian emperor and Tuluor. Although they were not as terrifying as the battle between Xie Ran and Di, they were not much worse. They should be on the same level as Xie Ran and Di. Below the battle was a huge lake. On both sides of the lake, there were many experts. The Earth's core lake was the place where the imperial family and the heaven-suppressing divine army fought. The black-robed middle-aged man from the divine ruins continent appeared not far away. He looked at the battle ahead and did not participate for the time being. Xie Sheng, you're already so old. You're no match for me. In the middle of the battle, a voice rang out. Lu Ming's expression changed. He had heard from Xian Yanqing that the previous sacred emperor was called Xie Sheng, and he was the grandfather of the current sacred emperor, Xie Qitian. He had stepped down from his position 6,000 years ago and focused on his cultivation. The outside world thought that after so many years, Xie Sheng had already passed away. However, there were also people who said that Xie Sheng was still alive. However, there had never been any proof. Now, it was proven that Xie Sheng was indeed still alive. The other side is the battle martial emperor. Lu Ming's eyes flickered as he looked into the distance. The man who was fighting with Xie Sheng was a peerless expert of the heaven-suppressing divine army, the 100 battle martial emperor, the one who had won every battle. Both of them were the leaders of their respective forces. Their cultivations had already entered the second level of the martial royal realm, and they were engaged in an intense battle. Whether I'm a match for you or not, we can't say for sure until we fight to the end. Baijan, I advise you to hand over the Heavenly King token. This is the inheritance of my imperial family. It's not something you can take, said Xie Sheng. His voice was ancient, but it was like thunder, rumbling through heaven and earth, traveling an unknown distance. Xie Sheng, you're already so old. Don't think about the Heavenly King's order anymore. The battle martial emperor laughed heartily, and the battle between the two became even more intense. In the horizon, when the black-robed middle-aged man in the divine ruins continent heard the 3 words Heavenly King token, he raised his eyebrows and muttered, I didn't expect the divine wilderness continent's Heavenly King token to still be here. This trip was not in vain. With that, he flicked his sleeves and took a step forward, rapidly approaching the battlefield between Xie Sheng and the Baijan martial emperor. Who is it? Who is it? As soon as the black-robed middle-aged man approached, Xie Sheng and the Baijan martial emperor sensed it. They shouted and separated from each other, staring at the black-robed middle-aged man with a serious look. They only noticed the black-robed middle-aged man when he was so close to them. This caused them to be shocked. They scanned the black-clothed middle-aged man with their spiritual sense and realized that they could not see through his strength. They were even more shocked. What? Seeing this, Lu Ming and Xiel Wan were a little surprised. It seemed that the people from the Divine Ruins continent were not the help of the imperial family or Xiel Wan. Otherwise, Xie Sheng and the Baijan martial emperor would not be so surprised. You have the Heavenly King's order. The black-robed middle-aged man looked at the battle martial emperor. Who are you, sir? The battle martial emperor frowned and asked. I'm not answering your question. Let me ask you again. Do you have the Heavenly King's order? The black-robed middle-aged man's voice turned cold. There was a hint of impatience in his tone, and it sounded like he was giving orders. His words made the Baijan martial emperor's face turn ugly. In the divine wilderness continent, no one dared to speak to him in such a tone. So what if I have the Heavenly King's token? The 100 battles martial emperor said. Oh, it's good that it's on you. Hand it over, give me the Heavenly King's token, the black-robed man said. Ha ha ha. The 100 battles martial emperor laughed and said, You're really funny. You appeared out of nowhere and asked me to hand over the Heavenly King token. You're too confident. I wonder if you have the ability to be confident. The battle martial emperor's eyes flickered with a cold light. So you're saying that you're not handing it over? Then I'll take it personally. The black-robed middle-aged man took a step forward as soon as he finished speaking. Boom. With this step, the sky and the earth shook violently. Below him, the core lake created thousands of waves. Suppress. An indifferent voice came out of the black-robed middle-aged man's mouth. He struck out with his palm, and endless spiritual chi gathered in the sky. A towering ancient tree, as tall as the sky, pressed down on the Baijan martial emperor. As soon as this move was used, the battle martial emperor's expression changed drastically, and his face became extremely grave. 100 battle god fist. The battle martial emperor punched out 100 times in an instant. Each punch contained a monstrous combat power that could penetrate the earth and destroy mountains and rivers. 100 fist forces gathered in the air and merged into one fist force. Its power increased by 100 times. Boom. The fist force hit the ancient tree, making a world-destroying sound. Press. The black-robed middle-aged man spat out another word. He pressed his palm down and the branches of the ancient tree stretched out. Green light shot into the sky. Boom. Baijan Martial Emperor's fist force collapsed instantly, and the towering ancient tree continued to press down on him. Chapter 1187. 1187 Yuan Continent's Big Sect, Heavenly God Sect. The Baijan Martial Emperor's expression changed drastically as he tried his best to counterattack. He kept striking out, but it was all in vain. He was crushed by the towering ancient tree, and in the end, the towering ancient tree heavily bombarded his body. The Battle Martial Emperor screamed and fell into the core lake. Boom! Baijan Martial Emperor's body smashed into the lake, and suddenly, a huge wave appeared in the lake. With Baijan Martial Emperor's body as the center, the lake water rippled and madly rushed in all directions. In a breath's time, the water in the entire core lake was sent flying for hundreds of thousands of miles, turning into steam and dissipating in the air. With the Baijan Martial Emperor as the center, not a single drop of water could be seen within a 100,000-mile radius. Everyone could only see him lying on the ground in the middle of the Earth core lake, coughing up blood. At the scene, everyone from the royal family, the Xie family, and the heaven-suppressing divine army widened their eyes in shock. 100 Battle Martial Emperor was seriously injured by this black-robed middle-aged man with a single strike. How was this possible? A battle-hardened Martial Emperor was the leader of the heaven-suppressing divine army. He was an expert at the peak of the divine wilderness continent. He was invincible and had won every battle. This was how the name Battle Martial Emperor came about. But now, he had been defeated in one move. This was simply unbelievable. Xie Sheng was also shocked and in disbelief. The 100 Battle Martial Emperor was not weaker than him, but he had actually lost so badly. This made him feel a little apprehensive. So strong. In the distance, Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. As expected of a third-level martial royal realm expert. You're overestimating yourself. The black-robed middle-aged man looked down at the battle-tested Martial Emperor and said, "Now, are you going to hand it over or not? If you don't hand it over, I can take it myself." There was a hint of killing intent in his voice. His meaning was obvious. If the warring Martial Emperor refused to hand it over, he could kill him and take it himself. The warring Martial Emperor's expression was extremely ugly. He was extremely unwilling, but he was helpless in the face of such an invincible opponent. In the end, he let out a long sigh, took out a token, and threw it to the black-robed middle-aged man. The black-robed man caught the token and glanced at it. A hint of joy appeared on his face. It's indeed the Heavenly King's order. Although the Divine Ruins continent was much stronger than the Divine Wilderness continent, it was still a speck of dust compared to the Yuan continent. It was extremely difficult to join a large faction in the Yuan continent. The Heavenly King token was also a supreme treasure to him. "Sir, you are not from the Divine Wilderness continent, right?" Xie Sheng looked at the black-robed middle-aged man, his eyes filled with unwillingness. Now that the Heavenly King token had fallen into the hands of the black-robed middle-aged man, the imperial family had no chance. As soon as he said this, the hearts of the people from the royal family and the heaven-suppressing divine army were shocked. If he was not from the divine wilderness mainland, could he be from overseas? That's right, I'm from the Divine Ruins continent, God's Gate South God Palace. You've lived for a long time, so you should have heard of it, right? The black-robed middle-aged man explained as he put away the Heavenly King token. He seemed to be in a good mood. "What? You are from the Gate of God of the continent of the Divine Ruins?" Xie Sheng seemed to be very surprised. His expression changed, and then he became very respectful. He cupped his fists at the middle-aged man in black and said, "So it's the experts of the Gate of God. I'm sorry for not welcoming you. Please forgive me." At the scene, the emperors had similar expressions as Xie Sheng. Other than shock, there was also a trace of respect. When the Battle Martial Emperor heard this, the unwillingness in his eyes finally disappeared, and it was replaced with helplessness. As for those below the emperor rank, their faces were filled with confusion. "As expected, they are from the Gate of God," Xiel Wan muttered. "Senior, is the Gate of God very strong?" Lu Ming asked curiously. "Of course it's very strong. The primordial realm is vast and boundless. Of course, most of its territory is the sea. The sea is endless, and there are countless continents scattered across the endless sea. Some continents are not far from each other. When they gather in a region, they are called a group of continents, just like the islands in the ocean. Some islands are called islands when they gather together, and it is the same for the continent. Ciel Wan explained. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Outside the divine wilderness continent, it was really endless and beautiful. And the sea region where the divine wilderness continent is located is called the Divine Ruins Continent Cluster. It is made up of dozens of huge continents. Just from the name, you can tell that the Divine Ruins Continent is the most respected continent in this continent cluster. The Divine Ruins Continent is vast, at least 10 times the size of the Divine Wilderness Continent. There are many experts, outstanding people, and the number of emperors is also much more than the Divine Wilderness Continent. And the Divine Ruins Continent is completely ruled by one power, and that power is the Gate of God. Ciel Wan continued to explain. Lu Ming finally knew how powerful the Gate of God was. The Divine Ruins Continent was at least 10 times the size of the Divine Wilderness Continent, and it was completely ruled by a single force, the Gate of God. The so-called overlords of the Divine Wilderness Continent were as weak as babies in front of the Gate of God. The black-robed middle-aged man, or rather, the warship, was from the Gate of God. I wonder what is the reason for our esteemed guest's visit to the Divine Wilderness. The battle-martial emperor flew up to the sky and cupped his fists respectfully. The heavenly king token had been taken away by the experts of the Gate of God, so he could only choose to forget about it. I am here to bring good fortune to your Divine Wilderness Continent, the black-robed middle-aged man said. Bring good fortune? Xie Sheng, the 100 battles martial emperor, and the rest of the people looked at each other in confusion. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, a rumbling sound could be heard as the warship sailed over. At the front of the warship, a few figures appeared. There were young people and old people, and all of them had powerful auras. That's right, good fortune, a great fortune. The black-robed man's eyes suddenly lit up and he raised his voice. A few months ago, the Gate of God suddenly received news from the Yuan continent. The Yuan continent's Tiantian sect is going to select young elites from the continent group of the Divine Ruins and recruit them as disciples. The Gate of God will do it on behalf of the sect and gather all the prodigies of the continent group of the Divine Ruins together to head to the continent of the Divine Ruins. At that time, an emissary from the Tiantian sect will descend to select disciples. The black-robed middle-aged man's voice spread far and wide, causing a huge commotion. What? The major sects of the continent of the origin are selecting disciples in the continent of the Divine Ruins? Heavens, there's actually such a thing? Since ancient times, the major sects of the Yuan continent rarely choose disciples from the continent of the Divine Ruins. Good fortune. This is really a great good fortune. Even the sovereigns couldn't remain calm. They were all discussing excitedly. Thinking about it, it was understandable. A Heavenly King token could only allow one person to join the Heavenly King Hall, a major sect in the Yuanlu continent. It had caused chaos in the central continent and caused the imperial family and the heaven-suppressing divine army to fight each other. From this, it could be seen how difficult and precious it was to enter a major sect to cultivate. But now, without any token, a big sect in the Yuanlu could directly recruit disciples. This was a great fortune. Once they were accepted as disciples by the major sects of the Yuanlu continent, they would have a meteoric rise and a bright future. The cultivation environment of the large sects in the Yuan continent was not something that the Divine Wilderness continent could compare to. It was countless times better. If the Divine Wilderness continent was a stinky garbage dump, then the major sects of the Yuan continent were the supreme immortals above the 9 heavens. There was no comparison at all. In that place, the Emperor realm was no longer the end point. There was a possibility of one reaching a higher level. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.